take off at the same time.
Following a collision between an Army Black Hawk helicopter and an airliner last year, all takeoffs and landings at the airport are supposed to be halted whenever a helicopter is passing on a conflicting route. Officials say Marine One and the jet were not in danger of colliding, but were less than a mile apart.
Fox's Jared Halpern at the White House. The report also says controllers and Marine One pilots had a meeting on communication issues a week before the takeoff incident. The Dow up 104 at the bell. America's listening to Fox News.
When I hit my 50s, I felt like things were slowing down.
This is Sandra's Metamucil story.
I started taking Metamucil for digestion, but had no idea it would impact so much more. Not only did Metamucil help me feel more regular, but my heart health saw the benefits too.
Metamucil. One simple routine, 4 health benefits. Digestive health starts here. Go to metamucil.com for more details.
My name is Whitney Allen, and I'm a widow. My husband, Ryan, died. We never thought we'd ever have to use life insurance, but the unexpected happened. With Ethos, signing up was fast and 100% online. You can get a quote in seconds, apply in minutes, and get same-day coverage. No medical exams, and you can get up to $3 million worth of coverage. I'm grateful we were prepared.
Get your free quote at ethos.com/term. That's ethos.com/term. Paid spokesperson. Time spent on application may vary. Online health questions required.
Air Comfort Service, heating, cooling, and insulation. Weather.
It's a pretty evening across St. Louis with temperatures falling back into the upper 70s. Clear skies all night long. Partial eclipse of the moon. The max is going to be a little bit after 11 o'clock with 96% coverage. Then on Friday, sunny skies. 80 and another nice day. Friday night, partly cloudy, 66. Saturday, sunny. 80s to near 90. Sunday is summer. Sunny, hot, and humid, 98. This is 97.1 FM Talk. Chief Meteorologist Dave Murray.
This hour of the Mark Reardon Show is sponsored by Gamma Tree Experts. Your trees deserve the best care. Call Gamma Tree Experts. This is the Mark Reardon Show on 97.1 FM Talk.
All right, let's get going here for a pretty nice summer day in St. Louis on this Thursday. We have Sue Thomas in the house, looking very nice, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
Nice dress today.
Yeah.
Special occasion or anything like that? A nice lunch?
I'm trying to work in these heels.
This is a little practice with heels. I do that every once in a while. I just do it at home, though. I walk around the kitchen and just try to get used to them.
Well, no, I'm trying to break them in so they don't kill me on the night of.
Yeah, that's a good plan, right?
Thank you. I think so.
What's the night of?
Well, I've got several things to wear it to. One is like a day-long meeting / thing, and then a wedding. And so I thought, man, we're going to be walking that day. I got to get these things.
The wedding will get you, right?
Yeah.
Well, if you want to do part of the show here, just kind of wandering around the studio, that will not distract me at all. I think we can make that happen for you this afternoon, Sue. We got I think this is going to be pretty interesting this afternoon. And there are things that the host doesn't plan for and sometimes is surprised by. And we have one of those today. So we had the mayor, Kara Spencer, in live last night for a pretty extensive interview, and we focused on public safety, but some other issues too. But we talked mainly about the cops, and she's suing the police board. She wants to go back to local control. The legislature gave control to this police board, of which Kara has some say in, with appointments. But hang on, I got to do this. There's my can of poison I'd offer. So we have some response that's going to come this afternoon at 4:30, not only from Chris Saracino, who is the president of the police board, but from the chief of police, who's also coming in. So we got the chief, we got Chris Saracino.
That's exciting.
I would say it is pretty exciting. So they want to react to some of the things that the mayor said yesterday. And I'll play a little audio as we kind of move around close to that segment and let people know in case you missed it. But Chief Tracy will be here kind of responding to some things. Look, I'll be honest, and I've been on Kara's tail a little bit on social media just because I think the focus has gotten away from public safety, and I want it to stay on public safety. But what's interesting to me is one of the things we talked about yesterday was this funeral that happened for an officer a couple of weeks ago. He had committed suicide, and there's an allegation, and the union really hit Kara hard because they alleged that she started talking about things that weren't really appropriate at a setting like that when it comes to compensation and police salaries. The way that she told the story was a little different yesterday, but we'll see if we can get that sorted out as well. But I find that very interesting, and they're coming in studio, Fred, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So that will be good in the 4 o'clock hour. It's probably going to give us some things to talk about on the roundtable as well tomorrow. And by the way, we're set with the mayor of Eureka. Sean Flower will be here, and Jeff Rainford on the panel tomorrow. All the fun stuff, too, in the 4 o'clock hour with Paul Hall and Cusimano. My friend Chris Smith, many of you know that story. He was shot in the head almost fatally several years ago. And the road to recovery that Chris is having and the interest now that he has, he's been working a lot with John O'Leary. And John's been helping. Of course, John had a movie made about his life here in St. Louis. So Chris has got some things to share. And then we'll do a little music on a Friday with our friend Tim Summers. So that's all coming up tomorrow. Now, the big story this afternoon, we're going to get an update from Phil Holloway, who is the host of the Megyn Kelly True Crime Show, unless a verdict comes in within minutes. But we're on verdict watch right now for the Lisa Clancy trial. I'm sorry, Lindsay Clancy. I'm confusing Lindsay with Lisa, who's also in the news right now, too. I don't know if you saw the update on that, on the sign stealer from Joe Holliman yesterday. Well, there wasn't really an update. I mean, she no doubt stole one of the campaign signs from, Senator, I'm forgetting who ran against, what's his name, Jake Zimmerman. Senator Brian Williams took a Brian Williams sign, and there were other signs, but there's been no criminal charge. Remember that?
Yes.
So there's been no criminal charges. Look, I don't know that we have to have criminal charges. It's stupid. She should be exposed. Quite honestly, she should resign because she's an embarrassment, but I don't know that we really need criminal charges in that. Then again, if she was stealing signs like crazy, maybe we slap her with a misdemeanor charge or something like that. Now, on the Lindsay Clancy case, let me say a few things about this, and I've covered a fair amount of murder trials in my career. This goes back a ways, but I'm very familiar with the way that evidence is entered in closing arguments and opening statements and all that stuff. So I was paying attention to this trial. I think a lot of us were the last couple of weeks is where the focus came in. This was a 5-week trial. And, the first thing I want to say is she had kids that were killed, murdered. And she did it. We know that. Cora was 5 years old. Dawson was 3 years old. Callan, 8 months old. The kids need to be at the forefront here because they're the victims here. Lindsay Clancy is not a victim, I don't think. Now, I've left a window open, and I've had empathy because of my experience with mental health issues, with anxiety and depression. And I know that postpartum depression is real. That's a long way away from, strangling your 3 children when your husband's away. And what I will tell you is that I felt like there was a fair amount of evidence just following the trial in the past couple of weeks. And Sue, I've always said this too. I want to repeat this. I'm not on that jury. I haven't heard all of the evidence, right? And by the way, the jurors have been excused until tomorrow at 8 a.m. Central. So they're done for the day. They're deliberating. But I don't know all the evidence, so I'm going to defer to the jury here to make a good decision. But my ears told me a couple of things today, and I'll play some audio. I think, and I heard this echoed by some of the experts, Fred, you pulled some of this, that the defense seemingly was doing a pretty good job of explaining the situation, the medications, the alleged psychosis, all these things, seemingly was on a track here perhaps for either a lesser verdict or, not guilty by reason of insanity. But today, with closing arguments, is sort of flipped. And one of the things that I sent you, Fred, is like, I felt like the caliber, first of all, the caliber of the defense attorney and the prosecutors was super weak to me. Now, this is in Plymouth, Massachusetts. I've seen prosecutors and attorneys in Columbia, Missouri do a lot better and present cases a lot more than this. I was also surprised that the closing arguments took very little time. I mean, they were over. Oh, it was only a few hours.
They were given an hour each.
Right, but we've seen cases, and that's something the judge decided, I guess, so they had to stick to that timeline. But we've seen closing arguments take days in some of these cases, which is ridiculous. But something happened with the defense today because he did not do a good job with closing arguments at all, and I think the prosecution did a really good job. So if there were people that were undecided on that jury, they may be, heavily thinking about the closing arguments from the prosecution when they think about the evidence. Now, the judge was very specific in what they can consider and how they should consider it with instructions. Let me grab a mouse here so I can play a little audio from what happened earlier today. And again, this is a tough case. It really is. There's, I think a very, very split opinion, and there's some moms that have come out on social media that have been criticized because they've been empathetic to Lindsay Clancy. But here's her attorney earlier.
She's depressed. GAD, general anxiety. Give her a couple of pills, she'll be all right. You know from looking at the objective evidence in this case This young lady, believe me, I don't have many clients like that. This young lady did nothing wrong in her life. She was a nurse, a daughter, a wife, and a darn good mother.
Until the end, I think he might have to say there. And what they're doing is they're blaming the doctors and the healthcare system for over-medicating her. I mean, the list of medications was crazy.
Well, it was. And you wonder what clashed with another.
Right. But having said that, I also, when I went through the list of medications, I told you, Sue, when we were trying to get dialed in on my situation last summer, I was going back and forth with medications and with doses and stuff like that. So that's not completely unusual. Now, psychosis, which leads you, allegedly psychosis, which leads you to strangle your 3 children one after another. I think that's a different situation, but they still are going with the healthcare system.
How? Because of the damn medicine and the lousy medical care that she got.
But here's the problem with what the defense is presenting, and this is why I've always said I didn't hear all the evidence. I don't really know. I was actually turned in a direction this morning that would lead me, if I was on that jury, to a guilty verdict, okay? Just based on what the prosecutor said. Here's part of it.
You start to see the planning at about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. When this is on her phone, you can see her search for Miralax, kids Miralax at 4:02. And then a little while later at 4:13, you see her search for takeout from 3V. And then immediately after, she does the Apple Map search to see how long it takes to get to 3V. What she needed to know was how long specifically on that night it would take to get, because she knew she would have a limited amount of time to do what she wanted to do. And what she had decided to do was to kill the children and then kill herself. And so she needed to know, not generally, but exactly how much time will I have. And then obviously sees that that's not enough time.
By the way, one of the things that, I don't even know if I mentioned this or how many people know this. She did try to kill herself. She jumped out of a window and she's paralyzed. I don't know if you noticed this, but she's sitting in a wheelchair when she's in that courtroom because she's paralyzed from the suicide attempt. Here's a little more.
So then she searches CVS. And not only does she search CVS, she calls them and asks them if they have kids Miralax, and they say no, but they have Pedialax and one other medication. And then she asks in stock, because she needs to know not only what they have, but is it in stock? Because she's adding to this errand that she's sending Patrick out on. And she has to make sure she's not interrupted. She doesn't want that call at 5:03. She wants him to go to CVS, have the medication there, and get it, and then go on to B, so she has time to do what she needs to do.
Yeah, so they're trying to create this window and explain the window that she had. She wanted to make sure she had enough time to do all this.
She didn't bring them up to their beds and put them with their favorite stuffed animal and cover them up gently and lovingly, leaving them peacefully there. No. She left them discarded on the basement floor, like broken toys, because she was done playing the game.
Some of this stuff was really, really tough. And look, the jury has access, and they heard the 911 call, and they've seen the pictures. The judge was very specific with some of the instructions. You're not allowed to, let those images sway you in either way with the verdict. You have to, base it on the evidence that was presented. Well, let's face it. This is human nature when you see some of this. But it's going to be interesting to see how this jury comes down. And again, they just broke for the day. Phil Holloway is going to join us here in a couple of minutes, and we'll get his thoughts because he's been following this very closely. My thought really has to be with 3 names: Cora, Dawson, and Callan, because those are the kids that should not be forgotten in all of this. And I don't know where this is going to take Lindsay Clancy and her family and this horrific trauma and whole case that went down in Massachusetts, but hopefully it'll be over very, very soon. But I hope those kids are not forgotten. We're going to take a break. We'll get with Phil here in a couple of minutes. We're going to break down some stuff related to data centers at 3:30 with Avery Frank from the Show Me Institute, because we're going to talk about how data centers can still happen and not raise your utility bills, and a practical way to do this in an educated way without freaking people out. So that's coming up. Chris Saracino, the president of the St. Louis Board of Police Commissioners, and St. Louis Police Chief Robert Tracy in studio at 4:30, responding to yesterday's interview I had in the 5 p.m. hour with the mayor, Kara Spencer. It's all coming up.
Oh, crews have just cleared a stall. It was northbound 270 past 44 in the right lane, so traffic is thinning out through there. We did have an accident reported westbound 370 near 141. So expect a delay there. That was the left lane that was blocked. Westbound 64, that's approaching approaching Hampton out through McCausland. Eastbound a little slow at Big Bend. And westbound a little bit slow at Lake St. Louis Boulevard. Moderate volume southbound 270 headed down toward Doherty Ferry on the Illinois side. We're quiet on the bridges. And eastbound 64 jams headed for 159. By the way, eastbound 70, a slow go into downtown. I'm Sue Thomas, and that's traffic. 97.1 FM Talk, St. Louis Conservative.
All right, let's talk about a little real estate right now, and I want to talk about Stewart's American Mortgage. He is going to give you an opportunity to either refi or purchase a home at a discount because Stewie has a great offer for you right now. He's a great sponsor of 97.1 FM Talk. I remember when I would hear Annie talking about Stewie, I'm thinking, how does he pull this off with the bagel loan? Well, he can explain that to you. He's got a lot of passion for what he does. He's been doing it for a long time. And he has a path for you not only to get some money out of your home that you probably desperately need for some repairs or something like that, and still have a decent rate. Now, he's going to let you think about this, but you need to let him kind of do the math, and he's offering you this amazing discount if you're purchasing a home of 1% on a 30-year loan. If you're going from an FHA to conventional on a refi, he can still offer you the 1% discount. So that's important, plus the bagel loan. With the bagel loan, no appraisal fees, no closing costs, no title fees, no broker fees. It's going to save you money. He'll explain it to you, but let him do that because if you're skeptical, that's fine. He knows that. He's been doing it for 30 years. We give you his cell phone, so it's not like you have to call a national company or even a local company and get put on hold. We're going right to the source. It's Stewie and his son Jordan that do all the loans. Quick closes in as little as 10 days. Take advantage, though, of the discounted offer that is limited time right now. Here's his cell phone number, 314-324-4440. Stewart's American Mortgage, NMLS number 226715. All right, let's get right to Phil Holloway. He is on limited time because this case is actively in jury deliberations, although I just heard that they kind of sent him home for the day, Phil. Is that what you know? How are you, the host of the Megyn Kelly True Crime podcast? This is a crazy case. It's interesting, but they're not going to have a verdict this afternoon. That we know at least, right?
Yeah, that much we know. They sent him home. I think, Mark, there was about 3 hours worth of deliberation here on the first day. And look, this is not really surprising. This has been a very long trial. And these folks, once they get a jury 4-person selected, I think a lot of them want to maybe just go home and think and get their thoughts straight before they dive right into the deliberations in earnest. So I'm not surprised they sent them home for a good night's sleep before they come back.
Are you surprised because I heard some discussion of this today that this jury was not sequestered?
Yeah, they weren't. And honestly, I kind of wonder if that was a mistake. But no, they get to go home and go to bed. You know, I don't know how much of this you were able to watch of this closing today.
Quite a bit this morning. I did. Yeah,
that's the big story. So, you know, the big surprise to me today is that the defense seems to have fumbled, you know, right as they were preparing to possibly cross the goal line. Up until now, I would have said the defense was on track to maybe win this case. They had done a good job making the case that Clancy suffered from serious mental illness to the point that she did not arguably fully appreciate the nature of her actions. And of course, that's what the standard is in Massachusetts. And another quirk of Massachusetts law that a lot of folks may not be aware of, once the issue of mental illness or mental or the insanity issue is raised by the facts, the prosecutor has to disprove that defense beyond a reasonable doubt. So there's this built-in procedural advantage that favors the defense. But instead, we didn't see a coherent theme-based closing out of the defense. I think what we saw was something that was wandering aimlessly. It was meandering. It seemed like stream of consciousness, and it didn't really hone in on the details and the facts that were brought out during the case that really favored the defense.
I would agree with you, and I made that comment, and you're not the only one. You and I aren't the only one that said that, and I was rather surprised. Now, I've not been following this every day as closely. Certainly, I've said the juries listen to all this evidence. I'm going to have to respect what they say in their verdict. But a couple of observations. I thought that, first of all, I guess the judge limited them on the closing arguments. They seemed rather short considering all the evidence and the situations in this case. But the defense attorney did not come off as someone that, if I'm on that jury, would be empathetic to. He came off a little angry. I know he was targeting the healthcare system, but even the tone of his closing arguments was rather unusual. And then when the prosecution got its case or its chance and went last, they tied together evidence that seemingly could prove that she's guilty of murder. Now, Phil, there's a wide range here, though, right? They can go first degree, second degree manslaughter. They have all these options, don't they?
Yeah, I'm not sure how manslaughter is
I don't
one
either.
of the options that's on the table, because that's like, you have to have some kind of sudden provocation, right? And I just don't see how that fits the facts of the case. But I think strategically, it probably is helpful to the prosecutor if you just want to get something in there that's other than an acquittal or NGRI, not guilty by reason of insanity. But the prosecutor, speaking of them, they started out their closings by clearly acknowledging Clancy's serious mental illness. And if I were the prosecutor, I would say that's not the best way to begin the closings if you want the jury to think about the deceased children who are the victims in the case. I think probably most of these jurors had a pretty good idea how they were leaning before closing arguments. Maybe a handful of them were swayed one way or the other based on what they heard today. But
it's got to be unanimous, right?
You and I have made predictions before, and it's been dangerous, but I'm ready to do one if you want.
Well, you know what I was going to say to you before you even came on, before they announced the jury was going to get home, because we do have this track record of saying, well, it's going to take a while, and then all of a sudden the jury comes back. But I really don't know what to think. So, yes, I would love your thoughts.
All right. Well, we might wind up 0-2 or whatever, but
right.
We'll talk about this one way or the other in the future once we know if our prediction is correct. But I think this is going to be a lengthy deliberation. I don't think it's going to be quick. And let me explain why. There are facts that have come out in this trial that would support a verdict in either direction.
Yep, I agree.
And now you've got the added, I guess, what's the word I'm looking for? It's a wild card of the manslaughter instruction. The jury's not going to know how that's going to fit in here. So they've got a lot to work through when they compare the facts of the case to the judge's instructions.
I agree with you. I know you got another hit. I'm going to let you go, but thank you so much for the update this afternoon. We'll see where this jury takes us and when it comes in, Phil. Appreciate it.
You bet.
All right, that's Phil Holloway, the host of the Megyn Kelly True Crime Show, and his only caveat today was that he would not be on with us if the verdict came in, but we know the jury has been sent home. Here's a little sampling of the closing arguments from this morning.
She took the drugs as she was told to take them. She was religious in her obligations to take care of her health.
Accurate information about your side effects and symptoms, what your thoughts are, that's important for your providers to know. And she didn't do it.
Lorazepam, sertraline, hydroxyzine, lorazepam, buspirone, lorazepam, buspirone, trazodone, fluoxetine, zolpidem, murdazine, clonazepam, quetiapine, diazepam, quetiapine. It goes on and on and on and on and on.
They asked her, are you having thoughts of harming others? Do you have homicidal ideation? She told Tufts no. She told Gelada no. She told Dukes no.
Quetiapine, by the way. And I know that one because I take that. So that's a little sampling from prosecution and defense. I heard Donna Rotuno on Fox earlier. And again, the most of the legal analysts are kind of breaking this down in a similar way. And I think it's just because this is what we heard. If you listen to these arguments, the prosecution did a better job
I really am surprised watching this today because I was expecting the defense to come out in a much stronger way and lay out a more compelling case here in closing, given the testimony that we have heard in this trial. And I do think they missed the mark. And the state did a very good job. And whatever you think about this or whatever side you think it should come down on, they did their job today. She came in with a much more conciliatory tone. She was very measured and calm today. She did not come across as somebody who did not have empathy for Lindsay Clancy. She did embrace some of the issues that they seem to have just sort of before. So I'm very surprised, actually, about the way I feel today, because I thought I would feel differently when this was done. I'm curious to see how much weight the jury will give these closing arguments versus the other bits of evidence and pieces of evidence that they listened to over the course of several weeks. But they did their job.
Yeah, a lot of the same, line of thinking. And, one thing, Sue, I was thinking about is just the horrible nature of this crime and the people and the number of people that are affected. Not only the entire community of Plymouth, Massachusetts, but this has obviously gone on to be an international story, not just a national story. But think about not only Patrick Clancy, and I always want to focus on the kids here, Cora, Dawson, Callan. I mean, their lives were strangled away from them by their own mother, who they trusted. But Patrick and his state of mind, having to witness that, the first responders that had to come in and witness that. This jury has to look at these pictures. They heard the 911 call. You can't tell me that if you're not on this jury that you're not going to be very affected. It may even need some psychological help yourself, because this is such a horrible case. And I do not envy these jurors at all, because to Phil's point, and I know there's people out there, Matt Walsh is one of them, there's other people that are out there online saying she's an evil, evil killer. Maybe she is, okay? Maybe she is. But there was evidence that was presented that could lead you in the direction to have empathy because of the health care that she was given. But again, the prosecution brought that full circle, and they seemingly closed the door on some of those arguments today. So we'll have to see where the jury takes us. I'm with Phil. I think it's going to be lengthy. I would not even be surprised if this is not, a mistrial, because they can't find unanimity on the jury, but we're going to find out.
On the Illinois side, eastbound 64 jams approaching 159, all due to road work. Missouri side, eastbound 70 slow, headed for the Poplar. We've got westbound 370 slowing at 141. There was an accident there in the left lane. 64, that's some volume, and it's mainly Kings Highway out past McCausland. Moderate volume right at 270. And then out west, we've got some moderate volume at Lake St. Louis. 70 westbound looks great out of downtown. Slow pockets between 94 and K. And southbound 270. Right now, it's still moderate volume. South of Olive in pockets through 21. 55, a little slow at Butler Hill and south of Highway M. But that looks to be it. I'm Sue Thomas with traffic. 97.1 FM Talk, St. Louis Conservative.
I was on the phone just a couple hours ago with my friend Alex Rosenberger from Mastercars Inc., actually inquiring about a vehicle for my son who is in Houston. But they do such great work at Mastercars Inc., and I love what they do. I've purchased cars. I've sold cars. They're a used car dealership with new car caliber. They're very proud of the vetting process that they have with the vehicles that they will put you in. My producer, David Klein, we call him Producer Emeritus, great example. He was looking for a Chevy Suburban, big vehicle for his big family. He went to Alex and Gary. They hit it out of the park. Dave is so thrilled with the vehicle that he has. Now, it's got some miles on it, but it was not as expensive. And he'll even tell you that they thought they had dialed in on one particular vehicle and we're going to pull the trigger. And then Alex kind of got a little nervous. He goes, I don't know about that one, because they're looking at these cars and the experience that they have will let them tell you if the car's got damage history, if it's got vehicle repair history, if it's in a climate where there's a lot of salt. That could affect the the wear and tear on the car. All those things they take into consideration. Maybe some things you never even would ever think about. That's why they're the experts. And if you trust Alex and Gary, you're going to have car people for the rest of your lives. You really will. Mastercars Inc. in Granite City. Online at mastercarsinc.com. 3:33, this portion of the show is sponsored by Jerry Kelly Heating, Air Conditioning, Electrical, and Plumbing. I think I've mentioned before that, and this happened in the aftermath of the last presidential election a couple of years ago. My wife has become like an addict when it comes to Fox, Sue. So like when I come home, she's got Fox on. She loves watching The Five. She loves Gutfeld. So I was watching the other night, and they were talking about data centers, and it made me angry because Greg was so uninformed about data centers. I actually talked to Kilmeade about this a little bit, not specifically related to Gutfeld, but he had a panelist that went off on these things in a way that was just ridiculous. And then someone actually came along, one of the comedians, I don't know the lineup that he has all the time, but they actually said some things that made sense, and it saved the segment perhaps. But my position on data centers is relatively simple. We need them. We cannot move forward as a country without them. This is a national security issue, maybe first and foremost. Now, do I want a data center in my backyard? I probably wouldn't. If they're going to pay me millions of dollars, I might rent out my house and say, you can build one right here. My subdivision might have something to say about that. No, I get that this is a NIMBY issue, but I do think that people are coming at this from an undereducated, not uneducated, undereducated perspective. Avery Frank is with us from the Show Me Institute this afternoon, has done some work on this. Hey, Avery, how are you? Welcome to 97.1 FM Talk in St. Louis.
Thank you for having me. I'm doing awesome. How are you?
I'm good. So let's kind of talk about the what you wrote about, and I've got a couple of pieces here, is that, you know, we can look at the upside and the downside, right? The upside is that you have a multi-billion-dollar assessed valuation that can really bring tax revenue into communities. A lot of people are worried about their own electricity bills going up and things like that because these claims have been made. But what's the bottom line on the pros and the cons? Let's kind of start with that.
I think the bottom line is you really have to look at data center projects project by project on a case-by-case basis. I usually say that I'm for good data center projects and I'm against bad data center projects.
Fair enough, yeah.
And I think really if you want to look at it and be like, well, what is a good data center project? I think you have to really look at, well, what can a data center bring me to my backyard if I'm going to bring it in my local community? And like what you said, it's significant tax revenue, but not tax revenue to just blow it on pet projects. Tax revenue to lower the tax rate for everyone. And if you can keep from handing out these tax incentives, because if you're handing out a bunch of tax incentives saying, oh, you don't have to pay any property taxes, no personal property taxes, then you're really not getting much benefit from these data centers because they do bring a lot of infrastructure costs, which is well covered by a lot of people.
So you have a single 100 megawatt data center can use 80,000 households worth of electricity and consume on average 2,600 households worth of water. One thing that people say is they don't use any more water than a golf course. Do you find that accurate?
Yes, that's pretty accurate.
Okay.
And I really don't think water is a big concern with data centers. I know that might be controversial, but they use closed loop systems. A lot of other comparable things use a lot of water. So that's just more of a kind of a NIMBY kind of argument. I do think electricity is a very unique problem with data centers, though.
So what would be explain why you think that's unique. I kind of think I know where you're going. And then how do you solve those unique problems? Because obviously you even mentioned here that the, hyperscale facilities that they have can have power draws of 1,000 megawatts. That's almost the output of Callaway's nuclear power plant, right?
Yes, and that's about 1 million houses for those out there who are wondering how much doing the math. Like, it can take a significant amount of electricity. Now, of course, data centers aren't the only ones that take that amount of electricity. Like an aluminum smelter in Oklahoma is supposed to be the same power output as the entire city of Boston. So we do have some things that require these really huge electricity outputs, and that's why I think it's a little bit hard to just put it all on the ratepayers. I think if we're going to have one customer bring that much electricity, we might need to try to have some private deals off the grid.
Yeah, because I think what people are going to look for there is whether or not there's a level playing field. I'm with you on the tax incentives, but even on, anything, that's where I think people don't want their bills to go up personally, and they don't want to see these things in their backyards. Now, you said something in your piece that was interesting. And I want to explore this a little bit. You said further complicating matters is the fact that technology can change quickly, especially when billions of dollars in national security issues are at stake. Computing power that once required hardware that filled warehouses can now fit in our pockets or worn on a wrist, right? A decision that originally seemed reasonable with a proposal when it was first presented might not age well if the costs or benefits of data centers change as a result of technological advances. I would say I'd rate that paragraph as true. But, man, how do you manage that when you're trying to figure this stuff out, right?
Well, I think what you got to do is you got to acknowledge how difficult it is. We'd be like, okay, not only is this significant demand growth, but we have no idea what's going to happen. I mean, we've seen what happens when the government tries to mandate, like, and predict what the technology of the future is. You have these electric vehicle chargers that are getting mandated, and they take like 7 hours to charge your car. And like that's certainly not going to be the technology of the future. And I think we have those kind of things with data centers too. We don't really know exactly how it's going to pan out. Some people are wanting to put data centers in laptops. There's a lot of different things that can happen. And that's why we really got to have the free market guide this instead of government planning.
Avery Frank is here, senior analyst at the Show Me Institute. You testified on this issue before the Planning Commission of St. Louis County, right?
Yes.
What was the overall message on that? And was there a Q&A? Were they asking questions in that or not?
It was a 2-minute discussion, so I didn't get to answer any questions.
Okay.
And I was the only one who was neutral or / in favor of the proposal.
So did you just say 2 minutes?
Yes, just 2
wow.
minutes. So I tried to get it to talk as quickly as I could in 2 minutes.
And what was the message in 2 minutes?
Well, just basically, I implored them not to hand out tax incentives because no matter what regulations they made, if they hand out a bunch of tax incentives, that's not going to be any benefit to St. Louis County. But I also let them know that for those that are concerned about their electricity rates, establishing private electricity grids, like if we all got behind that in Missouri and let that happen, I think that could be a real significant opportunity to attract investment while building these power plants off the grid so we can get the benefits of data centers without getting as much of the costs.
So that sounds like, getting creative, and I always like getting creative, but that would be a process that would have to go through the legislature, right?
Yes, that would have to be the Missouri state legislature. New Hampshire was the first state to do it last year, and Senator Tom Cotton is trying to make a U.S. bill as well for the federal level.
So how would it work? How does it work there in New Hampshire?
So basically, a private electricity grid, it's not like Meta is building a nuclear power plant operating it themselves. They don't know how to do that. They don't have the bandwidth. They don't have a bunch of nuclear engineers working at Meta. What they would do is they would power with a private electricity grid who specializes in making small modular reactors, and they would sell it directly to Meta. It would be a private deal. It wouldn't be connected to Ameren's grid. And since it's not connected to Ameren's grid, it wouldn't be regulated like a public utility because public utilities are meant for monopolies, and monopolies serve normal ratepayers like you and I, ratepayers that can't influence what's going to do. But when you're not serving the regular ratepayers, that means you're not subject to as many regulations. So for us, the ratepayers, there's benefit from a private electricity grid because we're not paying for it. But for like a Meta or a Google, there's also benefit because they're getting to get their power a lot quicker since they're not having to go through all the bureaucracy like they would if they were dealing with a monopoly utility. So there's some really great benefits.
Yeah, so the private electric grids are called as CREs, right? Consumer Regulated Electricity. How far along in the process, because I've never really heard a discussion about this, are they in New Hampshire? Is it working? Do we know yet?
They just got it last year, and
Okay.
I do have to say that some people snuck some right-of-way stuff that they're not allowed to cross the right-of-way, and in a tiny state like New Hampshire, there's a little bit. It's not a deal breaker, but it ties their hands a little bit.
Okay, so they may not even be moving forward, but the concept overall is something you feel is what I'm hearing is worthy of exploration, right?
Yeah, I really think it is because when you look at the U.S. military, I mean, I definitely forget about this myself sometimes. We have nuclear subs. We have aircraft carriers with small modular reactors on them. Like we have the experience of directly having a little small modular nuclear reactor with something that requires a ton of power. Like this is like a city moving across the ocean.
That's crazy.
And when we have these data centers that require a city's worth of power, we could start trying to pair them with a small modular reactor, a private nuclear firm, and just let these two things build together instead of having to try to build a coal power plant hundreds of miles away and then ship the electricity all the way to them. I think it's just we need to just model a little bit what we've done with the military.
What's your reaction to the overall negativity on this? I was talking about this a little bit with Brian Kilmeade yesterday, even Mike Rogers, who's campaigning to be, the next senator in Michigan against Abdul al-Sayed, because this has become such a hot issue and people are all against data centers, even though I'm sure they don't all know why, but he's, campaigning against data centers. And I think we want politicians that, to me, this should not be a partisan issue in any way, shape, or form. We should talk about it politicians need to emphasize that there's national security implications here that are significant. It's not just, allowing these data centers to grow unregulated or unhinged in a way that's not necessary for the country and maybe the survival of our country, right? Because we don't want China to get ahead of us. But I'm still surprised at how much the opposition kind of mounted in the past, 8 to 12 months.
Yeah, there's been some misinformation out there. I think even there was I don't remember who, and maybe it was a New York Times article. They posted a number on water usage that was way bigger than it actually is, and they've had since recanted that. But I think there's just a lot of little fear mongering, I would say, and I wouldn't say a lack, like at the beginning, a lack of information is a problem. I think there's just so much information out there that isn't true that people are it's just kind of like, what do we even believe?
Yeah, it's overwhelming.
Chaos around it.
And I get that. And that's why I wanted to have you on this afternoon. So, Avery, I appreciate it. Avery Frank with the Show Me Institute. Keep us posted, okay?
Awesome.
All right, take care.
Yeah.
Well, on the roads right now, it's just the beginnings of volume. Southbound 55, a little bit at Butler Hill. Southbound 270, moderate volume, 64 in pockets down through 21. Southbound 170, slowing at 64. Westbound 70, not bad out of downtown. Eastbound is slow, headed into the city. Westbound picks up as you head for Cave Springs. And 64 westbound, it's mainly Kings Highway out through McCausland and a little bit in Chesterfield Valley, not too much, and some at Lake St. Louis Boulevard. We're fine on the bridges, but 64 eastbound slowing at 159, but so is westbound 5570 slowing at 111. Sue Thomas with traffic, 97.1 FM Talk, St. Louis Conservative.
I want to thank George Rosenthal and the whole team from ThrottleNet. They were nice enough to invite me to ThrottleNet night at the ballpark the other night, and that was the game where the fifth inning lasted like 45 minutes. But besides that, it was a great time with the team. I got to meet a lot of folks, and a lot of them were fans and listeners of the show. But I want to tell you about what George and the team at ThrottleNet can do, and you can hear his passion every Tuesday when he does Tech Talk Tuesdays. These guys know what they're doing. They've been in St. Louis for a long time. They will tell you that most businesses don't know where they stand when it comes to cybersecurity. That's a problem, right? You want to find out and get a baseline. That's why they're offering you, as a business, a free baseline IT security audit that gives you a clear starting point within minutes. Not confusing. It's a risk score. It shows you where you're strong and where the gaps exist. And there's an easy way to do this. You just go to throttlenet.com/971. George and the team will tell you, look, if your business relies on technology, and we were just talking about data centers and some of the other things that come into play, this is a great first step because you need a company that's your IT everything. They don't just fix problems. They provide full IT strategy, security, and support so you can focus on what you do best, and that's your business. You don't want something happening where there's a keystroke that's wrong. You have a data breach. By the way, no client of ThrottleNet has ever paid a ransom because their cybersecurity works. Get with ThrottleNet today. ThrottleNet.com/971. I didn't talk about this yesterday, even though I was aware of it, but it's a good follow-up to our data center conversation here because Bill Gates, I don't know if you saw this, Sue, he wrote an essay that was published yesterday, and he's very, very worried about AI. He's a guy that thought AI was going to be something that made the world a better place. He's not sure about that right now, and he says he's grown alarmed about the technology's increasing capabilities to complete workplace tasks and go on hacking sprees. We've seen it go rogue. We've talked about this with George Rosenthal, right? And for the first time in his life, Gates says that he finds himself wishing that a new technology would advance more slowly. I think a lot of people would say that, especially after this month, with those systems going rogue and the way that George and Thronlet described it, a lot quicker, like maybe even years before they thought they were going to be able to do this, right?
I know, but it's already out of the bag. What do you do?
He says, I'm surprised to feel this way because he says, I've never seen a problem that innovation can't solve. He talks about how, maybe we can respond to some of the risks, including setting aside some jobs for humans. I mean, can you even imagine that? What are we going to do? Okay, these are human jobs. These aren't. I was thinking about this when I got my haircut yesterday. I don't think AI can give me a haircut, right?
I don't think so.
Yeah, but so people that do things like that, I don't know that their job will be that affected. But he says, even though he's not involved in AI companies day to day, he's still one of the biggest, high-profile technology people out there. And the warnings that he had in his essay that was out yesterday really kind of are very similar to some of the other folks out there that are making the same cautionary warnings right now. But he's kind of like the first big person to say this about AI.
Yes.
I think there's a lot of people out there. But, when the AI leapfrogged ahead of the expectations in the software coding and you had those cyber attacks that were, a few weeks ago, he called those mind-blowing. He said that an AI industry that can't regulate itself and call on the U.S. government to play a leading role in intervening to blunt AI risks to national security, jobs, and children's well-being. My basic view is nobody's shown up. So this is a shrill call, and I want this to be bipartisan. I could not agree with Bill Gates on this issue more. I've said this the last couple of days. It should be bipartisan, but we should be having conversations. And I think at some levels we are having conversations, but I think people need to know, the American public needs to know, not only from the president, from Senator Schmidt and Hawley and elsewhere, and Ann Wagner and everybody, that these are things that the government is going to talk about. Now, if we know anything about the government, we know that they screw things up, and I would not have a lot of confidence in this moving forward being solved by folks in Washington. That presents a bit of a problem because then where do the solutions come from? And I don't know where the answers are, but I think that one of the things, I think he said this or somebody else said this in the last couple of days, and it's true, and I would use this analogy with 9/11. We're so good, and I think part of this is human nature, right? But we're so good at waiting until something catastrophic happens, like 9/11, to then do something about it. Now, I think we overreacted in this particular case, with 9/11 because we created this behemoth of the Department of Homeland Security, which I'm not convinced is really making people safe. But my point is that, when government tries to get involved and they think they're doing the right thing, oftentimes they exceed where their role should be. And this one's so new, I don't even know how that would be managed.
I know.
I mean, let's say that the guys in Washington, the ladies and gentlemen, let me not be sexist here, come up with some solutions here. Why wouldn't the AI folks or the people who are even more nefarious come up with ways just to counter what they're doing via AI and telling the AI what to do? I mean, that's where we are right now with some of this stuff. So I think it's crazy, but we'll continue to have conversations. And, of course, we have that great segment on Tuesdays with George Rosenthal called Tech Talk Tuesdays. Hey, something I forgot to tell you, Sue, and the audience about that game on Tuesday night, and it was disappointing because there weren't as many people in the stands when this happened, but it was the annual game where people came forward and took the oath of citizenship. And you and I have talked about that before in terms of, look, you have a lot of people that want to come to this country. We saw millions of them flood across the border in a very inappropriate way during the Biden administration. But there's nobody that I know, and the people that were, I was pointing this out to some folks in the suite the other night because, again, it was kind of happening. I think it happened even before the national anthem. And there weren't a lot of people that were paying attention to it. I've been in the stadium before, Sue. This is kind of sad, just reflective of where the Cardinals are. But I'm pretty sure I've been at that game at least 3 out of the last 4 years where I've seen this happen. And there was always a bigger audience. And the reason that that's important is because these people get applause and standing ovation. And there wasn't a lot of that only because there weren't enough people in the stadium. But everyone kind of took notice. And there were people of all, colors and sizes and shapes, if you will. And they went through the process, and they did they did it the right way and became U.S. citizens.
It's
and they're
moving.
proud. Right, it is moving. So there's nobody this is why, and I've pointed this out, a lot of us on the right have pointed this out, this whole nonsense about, immigration in it's not immigration that people are opposed to. Proper channel immigration is fine. It's illegal immigration, but the mainstream media and mainly Democrats, not Republicans, love to just call it immigration. They don't want to include the term illegal, which is a problem. We had a conversation with Mayor Kara Spencer last night on this show in the 5 o'clock hour about public safety and crime and her suit against the St. Louis Police Board. We're going to get a response to that in a very interesting way. Chris Saracino, who's the president of the St. Louis Board of Police Commissioners, and St. Louis Police Chief Robert Tracy, they're coming in after Sue's News at 4:32 to respond to that. I may have time here before Sue's News to play a little audio from what Kara said yesterday, because I don't want to play that when those guys are in here. But that will be an interesting conversation coming up at 4:30. And then as we get into the 5 o'clock hour tonight, Duane Patterson with hotair.com. He's usually here on Wednesdays. We moved him to tonight because of Mayor Spencer's appearance last night. Frank Miele is going to be here talking politics with us at 5:32. The Tour Championship is going on in Atlanta right now. This is the the whittle down field from the BMW Championship last week. The top 30 golfers, actually it's down to 29 because J.J. Spawn had a shoulder injury, and he was one of the, contenders last week, but he had to pull out and withdraw. So 29 on the course today, and no cut as we had last week. They played today, tomorrow, into the weekend. Dan Reardon with a leaderboard update right around 5:50 before audio cut of the day.
We had a stall reported northbound 270 just before Dorset. Watch for that. It looks like they've moved that off to the right shoulder. And southbound is a little slow in that area. Westbound 370 slowing at 141. There was an accident in the left lane nearby. Now, eastbound 70 still a slow go into downtown. Westbound looks okay until you get out to Cave Springs. 64 westbound, it's Kings Highway out through McCausland. Eastbound, a little slow east of Lindbergh through Big Bend. Are we going to have ball game traffic letting out here, too?
Yes.
And the Cardinals won 7-5.
Oh, look at that. Okay, so it must have just wrapped up.
So, yep, I answered my own question. And we have 64 slowing out at Lake St. Louis Boulevard. And southbound 270, some pockets of slow-moving traffic. It's mainly Page down through Doherty Ferry. On the Illinois side, we're jammed eastbound 64 at 159. Sue Thomas with traffic on 97.1 FM Talk, St. Louis Conservative.
I don't think there's going to be a ton of ball game traffic from an afternoon game against the Baltimore Orioles.
Never know.
It looked like for a while there, it looked like another one of those games that was going to slip away from us because we had a lead. And then all of a sudden it was 7-5, and luckily the Cardinals won. So that's good news moving forward into the weekend. The Pirates are in town this weekend. We're going to take a break here at the top of the hour. One thing I want to mention is the jurors in the Lindsey Clancy case have gone home for the day. Interestingly enough, some people might not know that that's not a sequestered jury. So they've been sent home after about 3 hours of deliberations, but there were closing arguments this morning. Fox News with more coming up.
jury's done for the day. I'm Lisa Brady, Fox News. The judge in the Massachusetts murder trial of Lindsay Clancy, charged with killing her 3 young children, sending jurors home for the night just over 3 hours after deliberations began. The defense argues Clancy suffered a psychotic break after being misdiagnosed and overmedicated, strangling the children just before jumping out a second-floor window in 2023. But Plymouth County Assistant DA Jennifer Sprague says there are multiple red flags over Clancy's claim a voice told her to do it.
She only heard the voice one time. She never heard it before, and she hasn't heard it since. So how that works? It's a red flag that she's making up the voice.
Sprague also using her closing argument to detail Clancy's planning and decision-making on the day of the killings.
This jury must now decide, is Lindsay Clancy criminally responsible for killing her 3 children, Cora, Dawson, and Callan? Specifically, did the prosecution prove beyond a reasonable doubt that she had the substantial capacity to understand the killings were wrong and to control her actions?
Fox's Brian Yennis at the courthouse in Plymouth. The jury is also allowed to consider manslaughter instead of murder. This could deepen the trade dispute with Canada.
We're going to be changing the name of Lake Ontario, effective immediately, to Lake America.
President Trump signing an executive order that Canada does not have to follow. That Great Lake is a border between Canada and New York. The president has argued Canada treats the U.S. unfairly on trade. Canada blames U.S. demands for the recent breakdown in trade talks. Americans are among the hundreds missing after deadly flooding in Nepal along the border with China.
We have 90 Americans that are currently unaccounted for that we're in coordination with local authorities to try to locate.
State Department spokesman Tommy Pigott says no American casualties are confirmed. That flooding is blamed for more than 300 deaths. America is listening to Fox News.
When I hit my 50s, I felt like things were slowing down.
This is Sandra's Metamucil story.
I started taking Metamucil for digestion, but had no idea it would impact so much more. Not only did Metamucil help me feel more regular, but my heart health saw the benefits too.
Metamucil. One simple routine, 4 health benefits. Digestive health starts here. Go to metamucil.com for more details.
My name is Amanda Klutz, and I'm a widow. You enter a different reality when you lose your husband, especially as a parent. Life insurance doesn't fix it, but it helps. With Ethos, you can get covered in minutes. No medical exams, up to $3 million in coverage, and it's all online.
Get your free quote at ethos.com/save. That's ethos.com/save. Paid spokesperson. Time spent on application may vary. Online health questions required.
We're all talking about the forecast that Dave Murray just gave. Not something that we're
Looking
super
forward
charged
to.
about. Yeah, because we kind of felt like after 2 weeks ago, and with the weather that we had for the golf championship last week was awesome. The last couple of days have been good, but now we get another blast of heat. It is still August in St. Louis, but man, I thought we were moving forward to just 80s, and we got some nights where the temperatures were in the 60s. But it's not done yet.
Yeah, I could get used to the coolness.
Yeah. I think we all can. I'm getting ready to, I showed Sue this a couple of days ago because I have this unfinished part in my basement, right? And I have a fire pit, and I'm a known pyro. I think it's been established, right?
It has.
And I love to burn in my fire pit, but I'm not doing that when it's 95 degrees out. But I use my Diet Coke boxes, of which I have many, and I kind of...
It's huge! huge.
And I kind of stacked them in the unfinished part. I don't like doing the real thick cardboard. Like the stuff that comes from Amazon and all that, I just recycle. But the Diet Coke, those are that's thin cardboard, and it's good kindling for my fires, especially when I really want to get into pyro mode and have that flame.
It's a serious pile.
Yeah, no, I know. And so I've actually, in fairness, stopped putting more down there, and I'm just throwing them in recycling until I can burn. But I'm telling you, once I start burning, once the weather gets good, those things go quickly. I'm going to have to buy more.
Oh,
unfortunately. All right, this is going to be very interesting. Mayor Spencer was in last night in the 5 o'clock hour. We have Chris Saracino, who's the president of the St. Louis Board of Police Commissioners, and Police Chief Tracy coming in at the bottom of the hour after Sue's News. I wanted to get into something here about this guy by the name of Matt Calkins. Matt was the guy, we talked about this last week, that wrote for many years at the Seattle Times, and he had a piece that was spiked about the incident that happened with the two young girls that were sitting with the Sophie Cunningham shirts. I can't remember if those girls had the XXY shirts on, Fred, or were they just holding the sign? They were just holding the sign.
Yes.
And then the co-owner, one of the co-owners of the Seattle Storm, goes over and makes one of these 16-year-old girls cry and, tries to tell them that, I don't know, man, it was, Matt kind of summed it up what happened to him and why he quit his job finally. If I can get that to play. Is that playing? Why is that not playing?
I tried to write a column through the eyes of two student athletes who were kind of speaking out against, biological males in girls/women's sports. They said, we're looking at it. Let me give it to this editor. This editor is going to have a talk with the top two editors. And 6 days later, they decided it wasn't going to run. And I had a feeling it wasn't going to run based on past experiences with columns getting spiked. And I just decided to resign on the spot. It sounds like an emotional decision. Sounds like a rage quit kind of thing. It wasn't something I was totally ready to do. It's just because I felt, I couldn't do my job as a columnist because I feel like they were, stifling my voice.
So that was last week, and I don't know how much reaction there's been. There should be a lot of reaction to that guy. That should have been covered in the mainstream media. It wasn't. He's got a Substack right now, but listen to this as he follows up. He starts this Substack column by saying, actually quoting his mother. And his mother said, "You just wrote a trans column. Do you really want to write another?" And Matt says, "Kathy Calkins, who I've spent the past 5 days visiting, probably has a point. This new venture of mine started due to a spiked Seattle Times column on transgender athletes in girls and women's sports. But it's not going to be a single-issue Substack." So listen to what he discovers. This is fascinating. He says, "There was something that caught my attention recently that seems worthy of a deeper look. A decision by a sports sections gatekeepers, and I've warned you about sports journalism. I don't get it. I don't understand it. Ben Hochman at the Post is a good example. He's unhinged on this trans stuff. We had debates on this a couple years ago, and he's a wussy, and he blocked me on Twitter, but he's unhinged on this stuff. He asked me a question. He said, what would you do if your 4-year-old or 5-year-old had gender dysphoria? And I said, first of all, I wouldn't hop them up on puberty blockers and give them drugs. I'd seek mental health counseling, right? But Matt says, scrolling through X last week, I saw that the Associated Press sports editors added a new category to their annual writing contest. In addition to column writing, feature writing, breaking news, beat writing. Beat writing is like if you just cover the Cardinals or you cover the Missouri legislature, you're the beat writer. I don't know if people know that stuff, Sue.
Oh, good point.
I just thought I'd explain it to people. Sports journalists will now have an opportunity to win an award. I'm not making this up. I swear to God, for excellence in transgender sports coverage.
I thought you were making it up.
I know. When I told you, you thought I was making it. I mean, are you kidding me? So he says, perhaps at first glance, it looks like the AP's attempt to honor those who best tackle what might be the most polarizing issue in sports, a chance to recognize nuance and insight from every side of the debate. But when you look at how this category was introduced earlier this month, it appears to be something much different. Of course it is, because it's the Associated Press. He says this is and this is where it's dangerous, because the sports journalism world has ignored this issue until Sophie Cunningham. They've completely ignored it. When you have A.B. Hernandez winning track meets in California, when you have that softball pitcher smoking the girls in the Minnesota State Championship. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. Well, let's just talk about, Tim Thomas, right? And what happened with Riley Gaines and all that nonsense. They don't cover this story in sports journalism. I don't know why. They seem to support it, but they ignore it. Now, of course, ESPN doesn't ignore it completely because they give Tim Thomas Woman of the Year at the ESPN Awards a couple years ago, which was ridiculous, right? So Matt says the man in charge of adding the category is a guy by the name of Eric Hall, who serves as one of the AP's vice presidents. He says, I met Eric when I worked for San Diego Union Tribune, became friends with him on Facebook. Nice guy, but his speech announcing the new category might raise concerns about just how objective many of the organization's sports editors are on this subject. On the topic of that, I have to mention my little dust-up with Michelle Lee from a couple of years ago from Channel 5, because I ripped her for having her pronouns, her identifiers of she, her on the top of her Twitter site. The issue that I raised there was not personal with Michelle. It was professional. And my question at the time to Art Holliday, who was the news director, who refused to answer my question. I actually think I saw him in the building a couple of weeks ago. Fred, I was going to poke him on this a little bit. I said, do you think it's journalistically and ethically okay to have one of your reporters who declared to me on Twitter that she's a proud supporter of the Alphabet Mafia and she uses her identifiers? How can she do a story, because she was doing stories, on issues related to the trans debate when she's clearly biased in one direction? Art decided to not answer that question, shamefully, because he's a alum of my university, the University of Missouri. I think he kind of wimped out on that. But interestingly enough, the identifiers that were so important to the people at Channel 5 mysteriously went away at one point. But it's an issue of fairness that I was raising at that point. I'm not talking about women competing against men. I'm talking about journalism being fair. Do the story. Don't take the people who are, and this is what the Post did when all this happened with Jamie Reed. They didn't give Jamie Reed attention for what she was saying. They never tried to find the guy who was trying to have sex with dogs that got hopped up on puberty blockers. They went to the trans activists here in St. Louis to play them off as just regular moms and dads when they're not. They're trans activists. This stuff is dangerous, and these parents should be held responsible because it's child abuse. It really is. Now, they think they're doing something good for their kids. Tell that to Chloe Cole, who's detransitioning and had her body parts ripped off because she was convinced by people in this industry that that was the appropriate thing to do. It's not. So Matt goes on and he says that this whole guy, Eric Hall, he's the AP guy, he starts by mentioning a number of prominent athletes who had come out as gay over the years. Robbie Rogers in soccer, Jason Collins basketball, Michael Sam, he was a Mizzou player, right? Just to name a few. No issue there, right? He later alluded to a Supreme Court decision that upheld laws in West Virginia and Idaho prohibiting transgender females from competing against biological females. Still all good, but where's he going with this? Then came the final 280 words, and Matt says, I feel like I need to include them all right? Our job now is not to reduce transgender athletes to a court case, a statute, or a culture war talking point. Our job is to report what happens next, to tell the stories of the girls and women who lose not only a place on a roster, but a routine, a coach, a locker room, a bus ride, a circle of friends, and a sense of belonging, to ask what exclusion costs, to follow where they go, to show where they grieve, what they build, and how they endure. Are you kidding me? He's talking about the trans kids. He's not talking about my daughter, who will have opportunities robbed of her if you have a boy with a penis competing against her. This guy from the AP, which is the worst organization out there, they've been played off as a non-biased news entity for decades. I used to be a member of the board of the Associated Press in Missouri, and the guy that was the reporter, Scott Charton, is a hack for left-wing causes now, and he was always a hack. It just took me a while to find that out. This guy goes on from the AP because when a young person is told she can no longer play the sport she loves with her friends, the story does not end at the courthouse. That is where our reporting begins. And next year, that reporting will have a place in the APSE contest. I'm proud to announce next year's contest will include a new category recognizing excellence in coverage of the transgender community in sports. No, it's not. It is an award that is going to recognize those of you who support child abuse in sports journalism. This guy from the AP says, we're journalists. Words matter. Accuracy matters. Really? I can't even say this without spitting Diet Coke out of my nose. So let's be clear. Transgender boys are boys. This is the guy from the non-biased Associated Press, right? To report the news, not to have an agenda. But he says in his announcement about this award, transgender boys are boys. Transgender men are men. Transgender girls are girls. Transgender women are women. Their lives are not a sidebar. Their stories are sports stories. Really? I cannot wait to see the extraordinary journalism the people in this room produce as we tell those stories with rigor, courage, and the humanity that they deserve. I mean, I'm throwing up in my mouth over this. This is disgusting. And for those of you who think that journalism is in any way, shape, or form unbiased, I mean, this is a perfect example because people don't realize what's going on behind the scenes. They don't get how these young progressive editors, a lot of this happens with people that never even type a word out, but they may put a headline out there and they are motivated with progressive nonsense. This is what they do. And why it has bled so much into the world of sports journalism, I'll never understand that. I really won't. But this example and Matt Calkins exposing this ridiculous contest and this award is a complete and total joke.
Accident westbound 70 past Zumbel. Now, this thing started in the two left lanes. They've been working to get that off to the shoulder, but there is a jam behind it, and it looks like it is mostly in the shoulder, but that fire truck may be a little in the right lane, so take care on the way by. 370 westbound jams at 141. And ball game traffic downtown, but it's not, Mark is right, it's not that bad. But if you are headed out on westbound 6440, it is jammed approaching Kings Highway in pockets out through 270, and then again Highway N through the 70 split. 70 is fine except for that accident past Zumbel, and that's caused a huge delay. And we have a delay on 370 as well. Southbound 270, moderate volume in pockets Olive through 21. And 70 eastbound, a slow go into downtown. Sue Thomas with traffic. 97.1 FM Talk, St. Louis Conservative.
Well, this is going to be a very fun hour. We have Sue's News coming up. Then the chief of police for the city of St. Louis, Robert Tracy, and Chris Saracino, the president of the St. Louis Board of Police Commissioners, reacting to Mayor Spencer's appearance on my show last night. It's coming up.
These allegations are deeply concerning.
Does the president have any comment?
We're not going to comment.
It's not clear messaging.
No.
And now, Sue's News. Brought to you by Sue.
Well, I'll tell you what. It's National Peach Day, which I think should have been before National Peach Pie Day, but no one knows.
Wasn't National Peach Pie Day just yesterday?
No, I think it was
Tuesday?
earlier this week.
I saw a whole bunch of peaches down the studio in like the talent office. They looked really good.
Did you sniff them? That's sometimes
no.
how you tell. You touch them, you get a little give. Anyone?
I like a good peach. I like a good nectarine from time to time as well.
How about the white flesh nectarine?
Ooh, I don't know if I've ever had that.
Oh, it's quite tasty.
Sounds racist, though.
It does. It does. But it's past the prime. I got one, and you can get the bag, so you put them in schnooks and leave them on the counter so they ripen. And I did that. One was great, and the other one was So you never know what you're going to get, Fred. You can write that down.
All right.
It's also National Pot de Creme Day. Oh, I love that dessert. Right? They put it in the little pot de creme.
Okay.
It's
how is that different than creme brulee? There's got to be a difference.
Yes,
But no, I mean it's the
yeah.
same. You're giving me a hand signal for like a little dish.
Yeah, it's the same kind of. The bowl is kind of the same as creme brulee.
Right.
But they don't like fry the top. It's like a little bit of cake, chocolate, and they put like not some whipped cream, but some cream in there. Here, if I were saying this in English, it's pots de creme. Does that help?
Pots de creme.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah, that's it.
And it's also National Just Because Day. So if you got something to do, why'd you do that? That seems stupid.
That's
just
a big,
because.
Big lobbying group got that one through.
The just because folks, yeah.
Why'd you do it? Can't really say. Just because. And on this day in history, it was 131 years ago. Picture this. It's 1895. And the last piece of Union Station had its grand opening. It was the Terminal Hotel, and it was thought to be one of the best in the entire U.S. at the time.
That's pretty cool.
You know,
it is.
That's one of the things I really wish I would have been around to see in its heyday.
Me too.
Have you ever done?
It's so beautiful now.
Have you ever done a history of the Lou with Sue on that one?
Union Station has come up.
Okay.
But I probably need to focus on it. That's a really good idea. And they also said that at the time, they built it to house 250 guests, but it was also a very busy station. I mean, it actually functioned as a train station.
I've seen great pictures of it, like after the Cardinals won the World Series.
Oh,
and
that's
they would
neat.
return to town.
Oh, that's
And they do it on the train?
And they would do it by train then, travel by train. And everybody was at Union Station welcoming them back.
Oh, that is so cool. Well, that's what happened, and then it closed in 1970. So when train travel went down, it really suffered. And the hotel itself shut down in 1970, but then Omni Hotel opened it again in 1985, and that's when it kind of got its life all over again. And it had 550 rooms. So they added more, and I'll tell you, if you have not eaten or done, what's that Christmas thing with the train and Tom Hanks?
Polar Express thing?
Yeah, when they do that down there and you go into the grand ballroom, it's outstanding.
I've not done that.
Oh, you might want to.
I've done the fudge shop or the fudge place, where the fudgery where they sing all the time.
It's been a while since you've been there, isn't it? Yeah, get over there. I think you'd like it. And also on this day in history, 71 years ago, it was 1955 when the first edition of the Guinness Book of World Records was published. Remember, we used to keep those in studios.
Oh, absolutely.
It was a thing.
It was a big deal. I had those as a kid growing up.
Oh, wow.
I loved them.
And kids,
you still have those,
there
Fred?
was a time before the internet.
I've got one more. One at home.
I would believe that you would.
What is the year on it? Do you remember?
I think it's 1975.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Okay. You guys, there's a lunar eclipse tonight.
Yeah, I knew
you know
that.
this?
Right, I did know that.
Okay.
Are we in a spot where we're going to see it?
Yes.
No? Okay.
And the weather's supposed to be good. It's supposed to be visible. And the St. Louis Science Center confirms that it's 8:23 when the eclipse will begin, and that's the moon starts entering the Earth's faint outer shadow. 9:33, the partial eclipse begins. That's the dark core shadow starts creeping across the surface. But if you really want to see maximum peak, you got to get up or stay up until 11:12 tonight. The moon will be 96.2% covered, and it will kind of take on a blood moon, a little bit
I like
of red.
That. I'm staying up tonight.
Right?
Yeah, I usually am up to about 11:30 anyway.
11:30. I haven't seen
By the
that
way,
in years.
did you? Well, you get up early.
Yeah.
Did we? I don't even know if we talked about it, but a couple of weeks ago they had a solar eclipse in Europe.
That's
that was
cool.
a big deal. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I didn't either. And we've got clear skies.
It was a total eclipse. That's why it was such a big deal. It was like what we had a couple years ago. Sorry, go ahead, Sue.
I didn't know that. That just always makes me think of Bonnie Tyler. 73 to 77 degrees. It's really going to be great. Now, Mark, you have to look to the southeast/south sky.
Let me think about this.
Okay.
Do you have enough sky to see it, you think?
Yeah,
Well,
it's supposed to be clear.
If I'm looking toward the south, though, I got a lot of trees that I have to look over. It depends how high the moon is, quite honestly.
Okay.
But I should be able to see it okay.
You can, on your deck?
Mm-hmm.
Can you?
My deck
which
that's
way is
falling
your
apart.
house?
I might fall right through the deck,
Okay,
by the
that's
way.
a solid point. No death,
No, my
please.
backyard points to the south, okay?
Oh,
So-
perfect.
Yes.
Okay. Wait, can you walk on your deck, or is it that bad?
Yeah, I can.
Okay,
I
okay.
can. I just don't want to let anyone else do that.
That's fair.
For a while.
And you don't need any special glasses or filters. So just feel fine going out to do that. Well, remember,
I can see people going out with their pinhole paper trying to see the moon.
in our defense, man, they lectured us. They
I know.
were telling us what was going to happen. All right, I keep finding Dolly Parton stories, and she was a true businesswoman, right? She spent the past several years working with a hand-picked team to create a roadmap of projects she wanted to do, even though she was gone. So just in the coming months, they're going to open the Songteller Hotel and Dolly's Life of Many Colors Museum. That will be in Nashville on the 29th. Dolly Dolls will be available online September 15th. She's going to have Dolly's Cup of Ambition coffee, which is genius. That's a line from 9 to 5. Will launch online September the 29th. It'll hit stores in the spring. Dolly on the Holly. They're not sure what this is, but they think it's her version of Elf on the Shelf. I love it.
That's pretty good.
That's good.
Dolly on the Holly. And they're going to do a Broadway production, Dolly, the true original musical. That's moving forward. She's going to have Dolly dog treats coming out next year. There's a bedding and home decor collection expected in the summer. Oh, there's more. She's already teased a Dolly Avatar show is in the works, but there's also a musical documentary, a biopic, a docuseries.
And I think they're talking about naming the Nashville airport Dolly
Are
Parton
you kidding
Airport.
me? That's
They're talking about
awesome.
it.
What is it now?
That would make sense. I don't know.
Nashville, just Nashville? That seems boring. But yeah, so she's
They should name it after. They should name it after.
Yeah,
I
I
like that.
100% agree. All right, and finally in Sue's news, I got something else, but it'll take too long, and then it will run up against it. Ooh, I almost lost it. The phrase, cut to the chase, comes from the silent film era when movies were usually long love stories. This sounds like a male nightmare to me, but the movies were usually long love stories that ended with a thrilling chase scene.
Yeah.
So when people would say cut to the chase, it meant, can you skip all the boring stuff and get to the exciting part where we do the car chase?
It makes sense.
Yes,
and we
cut
still
to
use
the
it that
chase.
way today, in a weird way, right?
Yep.
I love the Origins. There's a game called Origins. It's kind of fun. I used to play it. Anyway, we're coming back. The chief of police and the police commissioner president coming in.
I'm Dan Loney with Your Money Now. Best Buy posted a beat last quarter and raised its full-year outlook as a recovery plan takes hold, but its shares were still down 4% today. Earnings per share came in at $1.47 with a revenue of $9.78 billion, which is up 3.5% from a year ago. CEO Corey Berry said the results represent not only their takeover plan, but the want of the customer. Shares of identity software provider Okta were up 28% today. It beat quarterly projections for the prior 3-month period with earnings per share of $1.05 and revenue of $805 million. Part of the success was making its Okta for AI agents widely available to all customers. New products totaled 30% of all bookings. Wall Street picked up ground today as yesterday's tech earnings gave a good taste to investors. The Dow Industrial Average was up 105 points at 53,569. NASDAQ picked up 411 points. S&P 500 added 55. That's Your Money Now.
Texting enrolls you in a recurring automated marketing text messages. Consent not required to purchase. Message and data rates may apply.
The team's looking good this season.
I think so. Man, I miss playing football. Ever since I turned 40, I just can't find that fire I used to have.
Think it could be lower testosterone?
What do you mean?
I was feeling the same way. After 40, the body has less testosterone, and men lose their edge. That's why I take Nugenix Total T2.
That's the testosterone booster, right?
Yes, but Total T2 is their brand new formula that skyrockets nitric oxide levels in as little as 3 hours. Since I started taking it, I've been lifting like when we played for Coach Carter. My energy is way up, and it even spiced up things between me and the missus.
Are they still giving out complimentary bottles?
Yep, just send a text.
Text SPARK to 215-215 for your complimentary bottle of Nugenix Total T2, the next generation testosterone booster. Text now and we'll include a bottle of Nugenix Thermo X, our newest, most powerful fat burner ever, absolutely free. Text SPARK to 215-215. That's SPARK to 215-215.
These statements have not been evaluated by the FDA. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
.432, this portion of the show is sponsored by Jerry Kelly Heating, Air Conditioning, Electrical, and Plumbing. I mean, I'll be honest, I get exhausted talking about downtown safety. I feel like I do it every week. I feel like we do it every Friday on the roundtable, and I also feel like we don't make a lot of progress. I had the mayor in, Mayor Spencer was in last night. We mainly focused on public safety, and, you know, there's this dispute now between the police board. We don't have local control anymore. She wants to go back to local control, and there's a big dispute between the police board and the city right now. Here's what Mayor Spencer said last night.
This compensation piece is a critical one, and what the board has instead focused on is making those incremental changes to the salary. But at the end of the day, we could bankrupt the city on this if we're not balancing these facts. You know, you look at Detroit. You know, they've made a comeback since their
it's kind of amazing, really.
Right? But you know what that cost? It took the state of Michigan, the philanthropic and the private sector coming to the table with $500 million to bail out the pension plan.
Yeah.
And the pension problems in Detroit were driven by the police pensions. And look, I'm not trying to demonize this. Our police officers have the toughest, most dangerous jobs in the city, in the region. No doubt about it. Maybe even in the nation, because we've got high crime rates, and I recognize that it's concentrated here in the city of St. Louis. And our police officers, by and large, do excellent and very dangerous work. At the end of the day, though, we've got to be able to bolster them and support them with a building division that can board up buildings, with a Department of Human Services that can go and work with the unhoused, so we're not saddling the police department with these social challenges.
So that was what she said last night. Chris Saracino, who's the president of the St. Louis Board of Commissioners, and the St. Louis Police Chief, Robert Tracy, both in the studio with me this afternoon. Gentlemen, how are you? Thanks for coming in. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having us, Mark.
Who wants to start reacting to that? Chris, you want to take that one? Because what she was talking about yesterday was compensation, you know, raising the compensation of police officers, taking some of the benefits away, maybe front-loading it more. But maybe we should just start with the dispute between the police board and the city right now and the lawsuit.
Well, I mean, speaking specifically on the suit itself, I don't want to do that right now. I do think that we have, as a board, come into, following the state controlled board, we've come in to invest in public safety. I think that's what the legislation was requesting. I think that's what the governor was looking for, is how can we bring more officers to our police department? What's going to make us a competitive police department? And as we looked over this whole process, we thought the first and foremost was investing in public safety by investing in our officers to make us competitively equivalent to that of our St. Louis County, and even some of the municipalities.
Chief Tracy, would you agree with that? I'm guessing.
Yes, I'd agree with that. Well, the first thing when I came in, Mayor Tashura Jones brought me in as the first outside chief in over 200-year history of the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department. One of the main things that I asked Mayor Jones is that, can we get the salaries up? We're in the bottom third of the departments in the region, and certainly that hurts us when we're trying to recruit people. Back then, it gave somewhat close to a 12% raise when they were at an impasse back in early 2023. We were able to give it in 2025, been able to get another 7% raise. And then the board came along and gave another 7% raise to our officers and our sergeants to bring us, we're still not the highest paid, but we're somewhat competitive. And that has actually helped us with recruiting for people leaving our department for economics. And because of this, people that have left that we've trained went to other departments. I've sworn 40 back in that have left the department and are coming back. So those are things about morale. Those are things about coming back. Those are about economics. And certainly when they do make arrests, we do know we have Gabe Gore, who's our circuit attorney, that when we do make arrests, people are being held
doing his job,
accountable.
right?
Yes.
Right, yeah, significant. But Chris, because the dispute, I don't know how specifically you can speak to the lawsuit, but the dispute seems to be on the math here a little bit too, because she claims that the numbers that you guys want to roll with will bankrupt the city, right? So how do you react to that?
The legislation gives us a directive of what type of percentage we should get to be invested in public safety. So we're trying to follow legislation on that. The question becomes is what funds are eligible and not, and that's what we're trying to get to. Legal clarity is what we've been looking for since day one, and whether it's through. And in whichever direction it goes, at least we have clarity, and we need that to move forward. Everybody agrees public safety should be a top priority for our city and for our region. 100%. I can't think you could find too many people
I agree.
who would disagree with that. How do we get to that number, and how do we start using that number to invest properly in this department, giving the men and women of our department the necessary tools and resources that will go out and do their job in the policing in 2026 and moving forward.
But what is the timetable on getting a resolution and moving forward? Because things take a while in the courts. What's your hope there?
We've hoped that we've had a decision by now. It's not here yet. We keep hearing that it's a month or so away. We'll wait for that. They're in the courts. It's going through its channels. We would sooner than better for all parties. 100%.
Chief, what would you say, one of the things that I kind of go off on a regular basis is downtown, because I work downtown. I see things every day. I drive by Pelker Park. We had, a car that was inflamed a couple of Sundays ago in the middle of the night. We've had stabbings over here recently. We had what happened down at the post office. I mean, there's things, and I asked the mayor, I said, would you feel safe walking from City Hall to this building? She said, yes. I don't walk from this building to Busch Stadium anymore and back. I used to, but I don't feel safe. I've had too many things happen. I certainly wouldn't have my wife walk between here and Busch Stadium or even City Hall. So on the issue of downtown public safety in particular, how are you addressing that currently?
Well, I've been in 3 other cities and using the same type of policing. One thing is perception takes a long time to catch up to reality. Right now, since we've instituted the methodologies in place, we do need more police officers. We do need omnipresence. Those are big. But what do you do when you're waiting to have the cavalry to come in and get yourself back up to budgeted strength? Well, we put the CompStat methodologies, intelligence-led policing. You follow methodologies and also using technology to help us fight crime and make sure we feel people safe, get people to feel safer. And we have reduced in the last 4 years, we're down 60% in crime in downtown. And in downtown West, we're close to 60%. These are real numbers. These are real things that are happening, working with a circuit attorney, making sure we're holding people accountable, and trying to change the behavior of the individuals out there. We do have a homeless issue. We do have mental health and addiction issues that are out there. Every city's struggling with that, including us. And we're working with this administration to find ways that we can make sure that we can keep people safe, balancing having empathy for the people that are homeless, and try to make sure that we can make you feel safer walking back and forth in Busch Stadium. Just put additional officers downtown, and then we have an entertainment district where they're going to be infusing additional money that's going to help us bring more officers downtown on secondary work that we're going to be putting in, infusing in our strategy. So hopefully when you want to take that walk from here to Busch Stadium, we can get you back in the right place.
Well, because look, a lot of it to me is just if there's a police presence, that means a lot. People, even I don't even have to use Busch Stadium, guys. I can use examples of walking from here to Enterprise, and that's not that far from where we are right now. We got Soldiers Memorial and City Hall, and we got tourists that are around this area all the time. And I see things that are very troubling, and I've offered some examples of things that have happened. And we're always going to have crime in urban areas. I understand that, but to your point, I get that it takes time for perception to catch up with reality. But when you still have incidents that are happening, like right in the core of downtown, that gets publicity, and then you got guys like me on the radio yapping about it, and people become, even more fearful of coming downtown. My goal is to make downtown safer. It really is. I said this to the mayor. I thought it was incredible last week when we had the eyes of certainly the country on St. Louis with the BMW and the Savannah Bananas. People felt safe enough to come down and pack the stadiums, right? But we just seem to be fighting, Chris, all the time, and there doesn't seem to be progress, and that's kind of my concern. So, you guys can't even get into the same room and talk about this right now, can you?
Mark, let me go back for 1 second.
Okay, sure.
Experience drives behavior, right? So everybody's individual experiences, whether they're a one-time visitor or they work down here, that drives their behavior, good or bad. Hopefully we provide enough experiences that provide good experiences to the people that changes their behavior. That's a key. Investing in the public safety. Listen, right now we have the best chief, and I believe that's enough because I'm on the radio with him in the country. His network and his ability and resources to get to our men and women are incredible. His command staff and the staff that serves our public are doing an exceptionally good job. I do not want to get away from that. And we have to calm the noise down so we can continue to work towards, to answer your question, Mark, is to get into the rooms to have constructive conversation. There is no good. I grew up in a hospitality business. It's not good to be conflicting.
Right, yeah.
It's good to get along. It's good to sit around a table and share common goals and thoughts and processes. And we all need to get to that. I'm not going to skirt it at all. We all should get to the table and do so. We are all willing to. We all are adults to be able to do so. And I think we can. I think we focuses on our differences instead of focusing on what unites us and what can bring us together.
But when you're in the middle of a lawsuit, you really can't do that, right?
At this point in time, hopefully some of these things get worked out through the courts and we have an understanding and we can move forward. But I don't want to miss this opportunity or any opportunity to really thank the men and women, thank Chief Tracy and his team that continuously go out, even shorthanded, even, I say this in the sports world, playing a man down in hockey, right? But they continue to provide great results. They continuously drive our crime numbers down. They're continuously working. And I'll have to say proudly that I believe that the morale in the police department has improved over the last year since we've been a part of this.
And a lot of that, I think Gabe Gore really deserves a lot of credit there. You indicated that, Chief, because you have to have officers that are making arrests that are confident that there's going to be prosecutions, right? And we didn't have that for a while.
Well, even holding people accountable doesn't even have to have prosecutions, but knowing that the case is now not taken under advisement where we're releasing them within 24 hours where they're not even put in the system. That's demoralizing for police officers and for the community.
Yeah. Yes.
That has since changed. And where we're at, the one thing, Mark, I want to say, I've worked under local control. I've been doing this for 4 decades. I've been a chief over 15 years, worked in 3 other police departments. The one thing, this is a new type of government, but each government in the city have different nuances. Working under this, my main goal, whether I'm under local control or under state control, is the ability, can the chief have the resources, have the support, be held accountable, and to do his job, his or her job. And that's what has happened under local control under the last administration, happened with my last police department before I came here. And this board right now, President Saracino and this board has allowed me to continue to do the type of work that continues to see crime come down since I came here with these methodologies because of the great work for the men and women with the community that we're doing. So nothing's really changed. What I want to assure the public that there might be some disagreements because of some lawsuits and everything else. There's a lot of noise up there, but underneath, we are still working together with all our partners. We're doing the same type of work, and we're driving progress You continue to drive, and I can give you the numbers and put them out on the air so people can see them. But perception takes a long time to catch up to reality. But that's the thing. You still have stabilization. This board extended a contract to keep me here for several more years because they wanted the stability and the balance, but they're allowing this chief to do his job. And that's why you're seeing the results that we have. Give me the resources, give our department the resources, still hold me accountable, hold the department accountable, but let us do the work that's been working under local control. And this state-appointed board is allowing this chief to do that job in our department.
Is it? But for you, like Tashara was basically your boss, right, for a while. So is it awkward working under a different system, or it is what it is?
Well, what I said is that, it's a different way. Sometimes you have weak mayoral places and they have a strong city manager. You work in different places. You're working for a board. You have to remember the mayor of the city is also part of that board and has influence and decision making. You still answer up to that board, and the mayor being one of them. And so there is oversight from the city. There's oversight with the appointed board because of that position that you have. So I take it seriously. I report back up to them. I want to make sure that I'm getting the job done, and make sure that we can get this done under any type of government. My job is about the profession. Is about law enforcement and being able to go out and execute what I was brought in here to do. And this board has done it, and so did the last administration.
Is the board even meeting, though, Chris?
Yes,
you do meet.
We meet on the first Wednesday of every month and the third Wednesday of every month. So we do.
Is the mayor there then?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
She attends every
okay.
Meeting.
Good.
Our meetings are streamed. They're open to the public. We have agenda, and we go through our agenda. I just like to say, Mark, and I don't know the time, but since we're founded, we put a governance policy together. We gave the chief a 3-year contract. He's done an outstanding job. We continue to work and invest in the collective bargaining agreement for our officers and sergeants, which we did. We also have done this fast track recruitment blitz that we're able to get them through 3 stages of the recruiting process within a certain amount of time that before we would have never been able to do, but under our HR leadership and being under the department, we're able to do so, which is driven about
those are all good things.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So.
Do you have, Sue, you have a question?
I do. So, Chris, you're saying the money is there. It's just allocated into different things, and you have to figure out which pots to pull it from?
One of the challenges we had, Sue, from the beginning was that we were going to face a budget, right? And we had to know how to spend our money. We were learning the budget system that was under the city. We had to learn that. That was very difficult. That was a very difficult, cumbersome procedure, but we got to it. We finally did. We worked hard. There are so many people that are helping on this process to get us to this point. So that has been great. And continuously now we're going to spend the money and have to be. It seems to me that we have a perception that the board's coming in and we're drunken sailors and we're going to spend all this money.
Right.
We just want to be professional and understand.
Well, I completely support that. Thank you for coming in. Chief, thank you for dropping by and giving your perspective. Chris, it's nice to meet you. I don't think we've met before, either of you. And I do appreciate the time and the reaction to yesterday, and I hope we can have positive conversations. I hope that the timeline clears up here because that would be good for everyone. But I appreciate you guys coming in. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Mark.
On the roads, well, of course, we had a Cardinals game this afternoon, but we won. However, traffic is busy, and if you're westbound on 44, it is just jammed. There was an accident reported near Kings Highway, and we've got a parking lot back to the 44 split. Now, 64 westbound lines up as well. It's near Jefferson out through McCausland. And then eastbound, we had an accident east of Lindbergh. That caused a major delay, and a huge delay out west on westbound 6440, Highway N out through the 70 split. 370 westbound jams at 141, and eastbound 70 is still slow into downtown. Westbound is mainly moderate volume in pockets past the airport out through Highway A. Southbound 270, moderate volume from Olive down to just south of 44, and we do have a lineup headed for and crossing the Poplar Street Bridge all the way through the 70 split. 64 eastbound jams 157 to 159. Sue Thomas with traffic. 97.1 FM Talk, St. Louis Conservative.
Well, I would say that those were very interesting conversations, very different the last couple of nights from Mayor Spencer last night and the police chief and Chris Saracino, and I really appreciate them coming in. Let me just give a little background just because we kind of got right into the crux of the issue. And my hope, Sue, is really I'd like to get everyone on the same page and move
that'd
forward.
Be great.
Let's talk about positive things moving forward. But what's happening is the dispute is on what the definition, I think, of general revenue is. So, in other words, the legislature that was passed, that the governor signed, that, set up the police board. And again, for people who might be a little bit new, we used to have a police board, right?
Yes.
And then a lot of us thought that wasn't working very well. Let's go back to local control because it's kind of goofy. There's only a couple of cities in the country that don't have local control. Well, that hasn't worked very well. So then the legislature says we're going back to a police commission, right? But the legislation also requires that... Yeah, right.
Yes.
It says it requires the city to spend a certain share of its general revenue on policing, 23% this year, 24% next year, 25% in 28 and beyond. But the problem is it does not specifically define general revenue. So the police board says general revenue encompasses a broad swath of city money. That includes reserves, the $250 million from the Rams settlement. The city says, no, you have to exclude those funds and many others because those are restricted for specific purposes like running the airport and the water system. So all this kind of started in January when the city proposed $200 million for the budget. The board wanted $250 million. And after they go back and forth, the police board says that they were actually entitled to $333 million. That's when the city sued, and they call it an unfunded mandate, and they're asking for the judge to strike down the law, which would mean local control would be back. I don't know, you can't predict judges and stuff like that, but that's basically what the crux is. The board is demanding the $67 million that the department should have gotten, and they don't like the bill that the mayor sent to the Board of Aldermen, I guess, that spends a good portion of the Rams settlement on tornado relief and stuff and not public safety. I think that's a legitimate complaint.
Yeah.
Right. But, just can we get in the same room? Can we get on the same page? Can we get this lawsuit settled and move forward and then focus on making the city safer?
I assume the lawsuit then is going to define general fund?
I would think
I mean,
that it would
I
have
don't know
to.
what else
Right.
it would be.
I think that's where we need Brad Young and his legal analysts and, analysis and stuff like that, because it seems to be that that's part of the lawsuit that's going to have to be decided for sure.
Oh, man. We've got an accident on westbound 44 near Kings Highway, and it's involving a tractor trailer and at least one smaller vehicle, and they are blocking the center lanes. I was about to put that up on X at Susan6768, and I still will. But we've got the left and right lanes getting by. And we also had a Cardinals game let out. So you can imagine the jam right now on 44. It goes back to the 55 split. Now, we also have heavy traffic eastbound on 64 headed for the Poplar Street Bridge, crossing the bridge. Westbound 40 lines up near Jefferson. There was an accident eastbound on 6440 just past Lindbergh, and there's a jam there as well. 70 eastbound is jammed into downtown. Westbound isn't bad. That might be your best bet. And out west, 64 lines up Highway N out through the 70 split. Southbound 270, moderate volume Olive through Doherty Ferry. I'm Sue Thomas with traffic. 97.1 FM Talk, St. Louis Conservative.
Let's talk about St. Louis's family law expert. That's Susan L. Ward. Now, look, one of the things that always comes up, if you need a divorce attorney, you might know that right now. Maybe you're going through it. Maybe you're someone who went through it before and you need something that will help you with post-divorce modifications. Fees are maybe a question, right? How much is this going to cost me? It's human nature. One of the things that Susan and her firm will tell you is the most valuable service maybe they offer is the consultation. There's no charge for that. So it's a 30-minute consultation with Susan or one of the team members. They're going to try to answer your questions. Also, going to give you advice on what happens next. And some of those questions can't be answered during that consultation. They may involve, further factual discovery, legal issues, but they're going to answer as much as they can. And that's a 30-minute consultation that won't cost you anything. You can do that, by the way, on the phone. You can do it in person or on the phone. No difference. That's the same policy that they have. And then you would maybe move to an initial client conference. That's a little different. And then you maybe start talking about money. But keep in mind, if you need to get a feel for Susan and the firm, what they're all about, whether you think it's a good fit for you, have that initial consultation because, again, there's no charge for that 30 minutes. 314-783-9400, the website, stlfamilylaw.com, the focus on family law, and the emphasis on you, Susan L. Ward. I feel like I have to sneeze. I'm going to hopefully hold off on that for 30 seconds before Fox News here. Duane Patterson with HotAir.com, the host of the Duane's World podcast, coming up after 5 o'clock. We're going to talk about all things political. Frank Miele at the bottom of the hour. He's a regular guest on the show as well. And then Dan Reardon's going to give us a little leaderboard update on the Tour Championship, which is underway, plus an audio cut of the day. Don't forget, tomorrow at 3, it's a Reardon Roundtable. Jeff Rainford, the mayor of Eureka, Sean Flower, on the panel tomorrow afternoon.
Stepping up the trade war. I'm Lisa Lacera, Fox News. President Trump changes the name of a Great Lake.
Flanked by maps showing Lake Ontario, renamed to Lake America, President Trump signed an executive order directing the Interior Department to implement the Great Lake name change.
This is official, effective immediately.
Canada is not compelled to change the name of the lake that creates the border between New York State and the province of Ontario. But it is something President Trump said he was considering earlier this week amid an escalating trade war with the U.S. neighbor.
Canada's been ripping us off for a long time on trade, very sadly.
Both countries announced higher tariffs on billions of dollars of goods imported across the border.
Fox's Jared Halpern at the White House. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney says the lake's name predates both Canada and the U.S. as nations. Vermont Republican Governor Phil Scott, whose state borders Canada and New York State, called the move petty and disappointing. The jury in the Lindsay Clancy trial will resume deliberations tomorrow. The defense claiming the Massachusetts mother had postpartum psychosis when she strangled her children in 2023.
In closing arguments, prosecutor Jennifer Sprague explained how Clancy meticulously planned the killings down to the minute, sending her husband on specific errands to get him out of the house. Sprague argued Clancy hid her homicidal thoughts from medical providers and made up that a hallucinated voice commanded her to kill.
Fox's Brian Yennis in Plymouth. Clancy did not take the stand. She admitted to strangling the children before throwing herself out a second-floor window in a suicide attempt. About 90 U.S. citizens remain unaccounted for a day after after catastrophic flash floods engulfed a border area of China and Nepal. The State Department says 3 Americans have been rescued. More than 400 people died in the flooding. America is listening to Fox News.
When I hit my 50s, I felt like things were slowing down.
This is Sandra's Metamucil story.
I started taking Metamucil for digestion, but had no idea it would impact so much more. Not only did Metamucil help me feel more regular, but my heart health saw the benefits too.
Metamucil. One simple routine, 4 health benefits. Digestive health starts here. Go to metamucil.com for more details.
My name is Whitney Allen, and I'm a widow. My husband, Ryan, died. We never thought we'd ever have to use life insurance, but the unexpected happened. With Ethos, signing up was fast and 100% online. You can get a quote in seconds, apply in minutes, and get same-day coverage. No medical exams, and you can get up to $3 million worth of coverage. I'm grateful we were prepared.
Get your free quote at ethos.com/term. That's ethos.com/term. Paid spokesperson. Time spent on application may vary. Online health questions required.
We are going to try to schedule Dave Murray for the show tomorrow to give us the update on the forecast. Sue, I don't like the trend here. I'm just going to tell you right now. The next 2 days don't look bad, but we're up to 96,
There's a 99
he said on Sunday.
next week.
So 97 on Monday, 99 on Tuesday.
I
And
don't
we're
like
talking,
it.
here's the other problem with that. The lows are only going to be like mid-70s, so you know that the dew point will be high. The only thing I'll say about this is that the week before the BMW Championship, remember I was sitting here and I was looking at the weather, and yeah, I think we even had Dave on one of those days where it looked like it was going to be really, really hot a week ago, and it wasn't. So
True.
I offer a little hope that sometimes the forecast does change, but it looks like we're going to close out the month of August leading up to Labor Day in pool weather. So the pools should be open for the next couple of weeks, and people will demand those. We have Duane Patterson back with us this afternoon, the host of the Duane's World podcast. He contributes at hotair.com. I like that in an email that you sent to Fred, you were coaching me on some things, and you called yourself Uncle Duane. I think I'm going to call you Uncle Duane from now on. How are you?
Well, that's fine. Hello, Sue. Hello, Mark.
Hello.
99 degrees and humid, you say?
Well, you guys have that in California right now, don't you?
Well, it's like, it's like low. Well, our humidity, what we consider dying humidity, is about 35%.
Right. So, look, there's this thing called the dew point, and I'm never one to really explain it to you, but here's what I know. When it's in the 70s, it's miserable, and that's kind of like Florida. It's really, really sticky.
That's like Satan's sphincter at that point.
Yes. So, but let me look. What is your temperature out there in Los Angeles right now? Do you know?
It's about 92, 93.
Okay, I'm going to look at this because I'm curious about. Is it
It's
sticky?
awful out right now.
Okay, but is it like
It's
sticky?
It's kind of on the sticky side. It's just the problem with LA weather or Southern California weather is it's either blowing wind off of the ocean, and it doesn't matter how hot it is, there's at least a breeze, or it's an offshore, or it's stagnant, and there's the air is just not moving.
Yeah.
And that's what we've got here is everything is just stagnant. It's just awful.
I can't find the dew point for Los Angeles, Sue, but I'm going to keep looking. I will keep looking.
I don't think we have dew because it got taxed out of the state.
Well, that's probably true.
That's
The
probably
closer the dew point is to the actual temperature, you can't sweat. The moisture is too much in the air, so it feels worse. You can look that up.
Yeah, we're sweating. We're sweating out here. People that go in their jogs and their walks, they're going shorter distances because it's awful.
Okay, so it's 7. You guys got a 70 dew point.
Oh,
That's pretty sticky.
That's legit.
It's not, it's not as much as is St. Louis or Florida hot, but that's okay. That's, we have a little empathy for you. Hey, before we get into some other stuff here, were you or are you dialed in? Have you been talking about the Lindsay Clancy trial, or is that not anything you guys have focused on?
For the life of me, I don't get why everybody's defending her. Her lawyer in the closing argument before sending it to the jury, I don't know if you have the clip, but the one I saw was, come on, she didn't do anything wrong. Well, except, of course, for murdering her 3 children.
Strangling her children, right.
But besides that, she's lived a perfectly copacetic life.
It's really a case, Duane, I have mixed feelings on only because of my experience with my mental health challenges. And, I know that postpartum depression is real. But what I said earlier, and I think a lot of the legal analysts have fallen down this way, in following this case, not from the very beginning, it's been going on for 5 weeks, but certainly for the last couple of weeks, it seemed like the defense was presenting a pretty good case to offer the possibility of, reasonable doubt. But when they got to closing arguments today, I didn't think the defense attorney was very good at all. The prosecution went last, and they did an excellent job. And I think they left this jury, with maybe more questions than they thought they would have. Now, they went home for the day a couple hours ago. They're back at it tomorrow. I do find it interesting that this is not a sequestered jury because, as much as you're told by a judge that you shouldn't pay attention or you shouldn't communicate or you shouldn't do this, people are going to do it, right?
It's a high enough profile case. It seems to me insane not to lock them up in a motel somewhere.
It's just a terrible, terrible situation. And I don't ever want to talk about this case without mentioning Cora, Dawson, and Callan. Cora was 5, Dawson was 3, Callan 8 months old, because the kids should really be remembered here, no matter what the jury verdict is. I mean, I was saying this earlier, Duane, I can't even imagine the trauma that so many different people have from this case, from this one case. The first responders who had to see those kids, Patrick, Clancy, who had to discover all of this. I mean, the list goes on. These jurors seeing this evidence and seeing pictures and hearing that 911 call. I'm sorry, you can't tell me that's going to be easy for someone, to move on from in their life. It's going to haunt them for a while.
Absolutely, it's just gruesome all the way around, and I'm not buying the people that are doing the whole mental health thing. I get people that have that, and I can appreciate that, but it's not like there was not help available to her.
Well, and also, I mean, and again, I'm going to defer to the jury here because I did not hear all the evidence, but the case that the prosecution made in closing arguments really did give me more information that maybe I had from earlier in the trial that would lean toward a guilty verdict here of murder. But the jury, I said this earlier, it would not surprise me if this is a jury that can't come to a verdict.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, I work for a lawyer. He wasn't a trial attorney, but he's as an attorney, as a constitutional lawyer, he's always told me for 30 years, never get ahead of a jury. So
no, I know.
Even when the OJ nonsense was going on back in the 94, 95 era, you knew what the outcome was going to be, except we didn't, did we?
Well, juries are very unpredictable. I've gone through. I remember one case I covered in Columbia, Missouri, and they broke. The jury was deliberating. People were having. This is before cell phones and everything. People were having a little bit of a bite to eat at a restaurant right next to the courthouse. And I mean, within 15 minutes, you didn't even get your food. The jury came in, and this was one where we thought it was going to take hours and hours, and they came in like lickety-split fast. It was unreal.
Yeah,
so,
if you're the defense and they come in that fast, that's usually not a good sign.
No, that's right. All right, so let's talk about, hey, we have a new lake in this country.
We're going to be changing the name of Lake Ontario, effective immediately, to Lake America. That's going to take place right now as I sign the order, and this is official, effective immediately.
So the first thing I said to Fred earlier is that this is just going to make the people on the left's heads explode. I did see a lot of that on Facebook and on the X, formerly Twitter, today. Look, there's a part of me that wishes the president wouldn't do stuff like this because we're in a war. We have serious economic concerns. I don't mind a little trolling, but I don't know if we need to keep doing stuff like this with Lake America. Will it be called Lake America? I'm not sure. I like the Gulf of America. I'm not sure I like Lake America.
Well, apparently it's going to be the Strait of it's going to be the American territory, the Strait of America, or the Strait of Trump in the Persian Gulf, right? I mean, he's talking about renaming that as well.
Right.
Look, there's a lot of stuff that the president does that you just kind of think, okay, you didn't have to actually take it to that level. even though you agree with a lot of the policies and personnel and whatever else. But that's baked in by this point. I mean, when he came down the escalator in 2015, everybody got the vapors whenever he did something and threw a spoke somewhere. Now you're this far into it. Look, if you don't like him, you don't like him going in. There's nobody in the country, there's nobody in the world that was okay with Donald Trump, or at least marginal on the fence. I don't know if I like him or not. I'm kind of 50-50 on him, but this was the bridge too far. This was the lake too far. And so
I'm not.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do. I'm not alleging that, but I think sometimes the trolling should be minimized in dealing with some more serious issues. Let's go to Michigan real quick. This guy, Abdul El-Sayed, I don't know what you thought. I want to ask you what you thought about the interview he did the other night with Jesse, but let me play a little cut here because he's still trying to defend, campaigning along Hassan Piker.
Hassan Piker is a streamer in California. You would think, if you turned on any media, that this whole campaign is about a streamer in California. That's not what this campaign has ever been about.
Now, your boss, Hugh Hewitt, said this.
Here's the basic problem. When you invite someone to move in with you, if you're going to lease a 2-bedroom apartment in a small building, your roommate is your roommate is your roommate. And that roommate affects not only you, if they happen to be a psycho or they happen to be outside the bounds of what people consider to be ordinary habits of living, they are stuck with you for as long as the lease runs. Moreover, they pollute the entire building. Hassan Piker is that guy, that terrible roommate, that radioactive presence in your life. And Abdul El-Sayed wants to cut him off. There's only really one way to do, which is to evict him. And that's very difficult to do when he got you there, when he found the apartment, when he put the deposit down, when he paid the security deposit. Hassan Piker is Abdul Sayed. Mike Rogers calls him their running mates, and Mike Rogers is right in Michigan. But Piker is also a running mate for every Democrat who's gotten close to the DSA, who's DSA adjacent.
I think Hugh's right about that. And I can't believe you got Debbie Dingell out there. I can play this audio. She says she don't be asked about this anymore. Congressman in Michigan.
I'm done. So don't any reporter ask me again about Hassan Piker. It's not what November is about.
Well, the legacy media will probably abide by those instructions, but they should not, should they, Duane Patterson? I mean, this guy is so dangerous. If anyone like this was just, it'd be like Nick Fuentes that was just side by side with President Trump. Now, he's a fringe guy. I know there were people out there that supported Trump, but it's a little different, sitting side by side, like being the roommate, like you said, and not refuting some of the horrific things that this guy has said.
Trump and Vance and everybody around said, we don't want Nick Fuentes. We don't want anything to do with him. He doesn't represent anything in the Republican Party. We don't. I mean, there was never any objective doubt about him being a creep, and we don't want you. We have a big tent, but that tent has flaps. That tent has edges. No such thing has happened to the Democratic Party until it's perceived that polling is out there showing that, oh, my goodness gracious, this guy's toxic. I've got to get away from him now. They didn't have a problem at all associated with him until just in the last week or two, where they stuck their finger up in the 99-degree 75 dew point and realized, okay, well, it's not too comfortable up there. We might as well get out from under it. So the thing about Piker and the cut you just played, number one, Debbie Dingell. She's demanding that media no longer ask her about this. Too bad it doesn't work that way.
That's right.
Now, you said that right before throwing it to me that media is going to go ahead and give her what she wants. When's the last time you heard me, knowing me for the last year or however long I've been doing this, year and a half, how many times have I praised John Berman on CNN?
I can't remember one time. Did you?
Right.
Just cross-checking there.
This morning
All
on
right.
CNN, John Berman brings on Debbie Dingell. He says hello to her. They got a nice two-shot on the CNNs, and he says, "Watch this clip." And he plays the clip of her screeching to the press, saying, crashing out at a El Sayed rally, right? And after that clip, he just simply, matter of fact, calm, doesn't break a smile, just looks at her and says, "So why can't I ask you about that?" And then shut up and then made her flounder for the next minute. It was glorious.
I like that. I'm going to have to try to track down that audio.
It was great. It was. I mean, everybody here in the studio, when I found that cut this morning, we played it on Hugh's show today, and the other guys in the studio, my board op and video producer, they hadn't heard it yet. And as soon as they heard the setup and heard John Berman ask the question, everybody busted out laughing because it was perfect. He said, "Who are you to tell me what I can or can't
Well,
ask?"
that reinstills a little faith because that should be the reaction from real journalists, which CNN doesn't really have any. But they shouldn't be telling reporters what they can and cannot cover. And let's face it, when it comes to Hassan Piker, how much has the legacy media outside of the conservative media really exposed some of this stuff in Michigan?
They have, and now they're starting to ask the questions because they have realized how toxic he is. And here's the fun part. So you played the clip of El Sayed saying, "Well, it's my campaign. He's
a streamer in California, right?"
So he's trying to put him at arm's length, right? Except there's two cuts out there that you need to grab. One of them circulated over the last, 12, 14 hours. It goes back to the campaign bus during the primary around April 7th in Michigan. And there's somebody on the press talking to El Sayed from halfway back on this campaign bus. And they asked him about, are you going to campaign with him after the primary? And he says, why the F? He said it. We had to bleep it. He said, why the F wouldn't I campaign with him? He's my brother. I agree with him on everything.
Right.
He said, we're friends. We're this, right? So, and then the camera pans to the left, and Hassan Piker is sitting right there on the bus next to him. It's like chef's kiss. It's the best cut in the world. So he's saying just 3 months ago that I'm never going to lead this guy. Why should I? That would be the dumbest thing in the world. Well, he can't have it both ways. He can't say I will never turn away, and then all of a sudden do the Peter denying him 3 times before the crow cries bit. Now that he's getting hammered in the polls. Meanwhile, Hassan Piker on his own podcast, 3-4 days ago, said, yeah, I know it's all politics. He's going to now disassociate from me, El Sayed is, and he's going to distance himself. But don't worry, we still agree on everything. We're still good friends.
Of course they do.
And it's all tactical.
Right. Well, and that's what happens. The question is whether they let him get away with it, and
So
whether the voters of Michigan let him get away with it.
There's no sincerity on El Sayed's part when he tries to disassociate. We are going to hang that albatross, that Hassan Piker anti-Semitic albatross, around the Democrats' necks all the way to November, and it's having an effect.
Duane Patterson, hotair.com, host of the Duane's World podcast, umpire extraordinaire. What other kind of descriptors should I have?
Coach.
And radio coach. Uncle Duane, thank you very much. We'll talk next week.
See ya.
We'll see ya.
Well, some really good news in traffic. Crews have just moved the accident westbound 44 past Kings Highway. It was a tractor trailer versus a car. They were in the center lanes, and they've moved it out of the way and reopened the lanes, which is great because we were jammed back through 55. Still not a great place to be, but improvement is happening. And westbound 64 is still lined up before you even get to Kings Highway out through McCausland. This is all due to an afternoon ball game, which we won. Now, westbound traffic slows again on 64, kind of between 141 in pockets out through 70. Southbound 270 slowing Olive down through Doherty Ferry, a little slow south of 44. And we've got volume eastbound 70 headed into downtown. Westbound 70 isn't as bad, just moderate volume. Past the airport out through the 64 split. 370 is jammed at 141. We've got some road work there. And pretty quiet on the Illinois side, except 64 is jammed, headed for 159. And some slow pockets coming off the Poplar. I'm Sue Thomas with traffic. 97.1 FM Talk, St. Louis Conservative.
Hey, Sue, help me out here. Drawing a blank here, brain fart. That theme park that's been around for a long time that's out toward where I live past 141 Eureka. What's it called again?
Six Flags.
No, it is not.
What is it today?
Yeah, it's something different. They have renamed Six Flags to Mid-America Adventure under the park's new owner, Florida-based Enchanted Parks. This is going to be like a Sears Tower Riverport situation.
Yes.
Nobody's going to call that. Nobody in St. Louis is going to ever call that Mid-America Adventure. It's always going to be, and it always should be, Six Flags. So I thought that was kind of interesting that they're trying to rebrand
Well,
that.
they have to. It's sold.
Yeah, no, I know.
Right.
I get that this is part of the process,
yes.
but it doesn't matter to me. They should still call it Six Flags.
It's still Riverport.
Yeah, exactly. It was funny because Ethan's not here. He's doing the Lindenwood football game tonight. He does play-by-play, but he was talking about, he's younger, right? He's 24, 25. When he first started hearing us talk about Riverport, he had no idea that was Hollywood
Really?
Casino. Nope. Well, it's a different era.
That's true.
Right?
Sometimes
And so I started quizzing him, though. I said, so what do you call the highway that's, between here and, St. Charles? Is it Highway 40? Because that's what we all said Highway 40 because it wasn't an interstate for a while, right?
It wasn't.
I think Roger Brand told me, you would know this, but is it because out in the St. Charles area there, or even the end of St. Louis County, there were lights on that road, and that's an interstate can't have traffic lights, right?
That's true.
Okay.
That's
so
true.
We still call it that. Then I asked him, I said, do you know what the Interbelt is? He had no idea.
What do you mean?
We didn't know what the Interbelt was.
17. I don't understand.
Well, you know what it is.
Yes.
But he did when I said.
Oh, you mean to
when I said to Ethan,
okay.
do you know when we say.
I was still on Roger. I'm like, Roger knows what the
of
Interbelt
course.
is.
No, Ethan, I'm sorry. I may have jumped a step there. But I said, do you know when we talk about the the Interbelt? Well, that's 170, right?
Yeah.
And wasn't there, because I was talking about this with Fred today, because we were talking about Clayton for a different reason. And wasn't there originally a plan, and I know that there's no way to ever do it now, to take 170 and cut it across the whole region so you'd be able to get there from 55 as well?
They talked about
right.
it.
That was originally. Because think about, again, that'll never happen because of...
It would destroy too much stuff.
But if that would have happened originally in the future, and we would have had that cutaway, like right in between the city and the suburbs to go to 44 to 70 to 40
be kind
to
of
50.
handy.
Oh my God, it would be awesome, right?
It would.
All right, let me see if I have time to do this here just a little, because this is a crazy story. We talk about AI all the time. So this was written in the Free Press by someone named Olivia Moore. And some people out there might remember this a little bit. She goes, earlier this month, a 19-year-old curly-haired student named Janie went through Bama Rush, the University of Alabama's annual sorority recruitment. Like many of the 2,500 prospective, I can't even say the word, prospective new members, she posted outfit of the day videos, Sue. Breathless recaps of house visits, clips fumbling through her way of trending dances and social media. Janie created a TikTok account just for Rush, and within a week, she was averaging tens of thousands of views per video. There was one difference between her and all the other girls trying to get into that sorority house.
What?
Janie was not real. She was AI, and she was born out of a single image generated by ChatGPT, and Olivia did this on purpose. So it was a bit of an experiment. She goes, in recent years, the process of all these sorority rushes, you've probably seen the videos, right? They do these dances.
Oh,
and
yeah.
It's very, theatrical and everything. It became a thing. So she says it's a hyper-performative, highly online ecosystem, which makes it the perfect testing ground for an AI character. Use the hashtags, put on a puffy floral dress and a pair of golden gooses, and the algorithm can deliver you thousands of women who follow recruitment as closely as degenerate gamblers follow the NFL draft.
Oh, I'm sure.
They're the ideal audience for the question at the center of this experiment. How do people decide what's human and what changes when they find out something like that was made with AI? So she says what Janie lacked in reality, she made up for in entertainment value. Within days, she was being covered as a breakout Rush talk personality. The Daily Mail crowned her Alabama's most popular sorority star, noting her major secret was that she was AI generated. The Nike she wore on day one earned a Women's Wear Daily deep dive. The online commentary debated her in viral videos.
Who put her up? In other words,
Olivia did. This woman who wrote this column.
That's genius.
So she says, the goal of my experiment was to see how far an AI-generated girl could get inside one of the internet's most visible attention economies and what would happen when the illusion broke. Have we fully crossed the uncanny valley and emerged on the other side where AI avatars and real humans walk hand in hand? If, and most likely when Janie was discovered, would viewers still tune in, or would they feel misled or ambivalent? So she says, by the way, The DNA for Janie was simple. She pulled a photo of an Alabama dorm off the internet. She asked ChatGPT to render a shy sorority girl standing in it. Let there be light, I prompted, and the machine gods complied. The first render was a classically beautiful blonde, but to maximize the chances of attracting eyeballs, I wanted her to stand out. So Chat then dutifully regenerated her until she had short frizzy hair and big glasses. Right? And the pictures are all in this piece at the FP. From there, she built out the video presence using a mix of AI tools used to generate clips. And then she says this brings me to a disclosure. I did not mark Janie's videos as AI generated. This is technically a violation of TikTok's terms of service, but it was part of the experiment. Would the platform flag them, and would viewers notice on their own? 8 of Janie's 20 videos ended up being labeled contains AI-generated media. It had no visible effect on performance or on the comments. Second disclosure, she says, I'm a repeat offender. Last year, I sent my first AI sorority girl, Tinsley, through Bama Rush. Models at the time could only generate conventionally very attractive people, so Tinsley looked like a blurry off-duty model. She was shown mostly from the waist up because the video models couldn't be trusted with her legs, and if you watched her videos in succession, you would notice her face and voice changed every time. Think about that. A year later, they had unlocked character consistency. And Janie, she says, while Tinsley didn't look real enough, Janie almost looked too real. One person said, I've never seen a more clear video in my whole life, but it gives a clearer view of how precious you are. Upon reading this, Olivia says she downgraded Janie's next video from high resolution to something closer to a typical phone clip to better mimic how a teenager might actually film themselves. So this column goes on and on. The first video had 100,000 views, hundreds of comments. Some people, well, she says 70% of people called her the cutest thing they'd ever seen. 30% called her AI. By day 2, a Reddit thread was assembling the case. Her dresser had 3 drawers in one video and 4 in another. The T-shirt lettering was gibberish if you zoomed in. So the audience figured it out, right?
It does.
Was AI.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now, and it does look like I can see how people would figure that out.
Right.
But you know what? Next year, maybe not.
So she says, with the audience now in on the secret, I had to step up my game. In her next video, Janie paired a $1,200 Zimmerman dress with $10 Shine shoes. Her sisterhood post introduced her best friends Fable, Soul, and Kimmy. They were described as recursive and agentic. Her final round outfit was sponsored by the Skirt Shop, a play on the pants store where the real PNMs buy everything but pants. So then she gets a warning from TikTok. Had my AI videos been caught? No. The Skirt Shop partnership was undisclosed ad. That's what they flagged her for.
Oh, that's
They didn't flag her for
funny.
AI. It was because she needed to toggle paid partnership or risk misleading her audience. The same day, Janie walked viewers through her Rush prep flashcards, pausing on one with the prompt, what makes you a good friend? She smiled directly into the camera and she answered, I'm a very attractive listener, and I try not to hallucinate. So this goes on and on and on. She ends up posting a finale, and, you know, I don't know what the end game here was, but she did say it was very entertaining. Janie did not generate herself. Every outfit was from a human, you know, and she did this. And I don't know if it really solved what her questions might have been, but she says one last comment came in as she was finishing this piece for the Free Press for from a loyal TikTok viewer. I was more invested in this than any real-life influencer. You're a real one, Meg. Janie replied. She would know. Oh, my God, right? I mean, piggybacking off of our Tech Talk Tuesday conversations, this stuff is crazy. It's out there. That's an interesting experiment for sure.
All right, traffic-wise, we had some issues because the baseball game was an afternoon one. We won, and it let out early, and just before rush hour, so we were swamped. But the good news is 44 has been reopened and looks fine. All lanes are now open at Kings Highway. It's thinning out nicely, but still some extra volume if you're westbound on 6440 approaching Kings Highway. And eastbound is still slow east of Lindbergh through Big Bend. We've got southbound 170, the inner belt, lined up from Olive down through 64. Now 70 eastbound is slow due to road work headed into downtown. Westbound isn't bad, little slow at 141 and out at the 40 split. 64 out west, most of that volume is just past Clarkson, and then Highway N out through the split itself. If you are on the Illinois side, we're fine on the bridges. 64 jams headed for 159. Sue Thomas with traffic. 97.1 FM Talk, St. Louis Conservative.
.536, this portion of the show is sponsored by Jerry Kelly, heating, air conditioning, electrical, and plumbing. All right, so the president renamed, I'm not making this up either, he renamed Lake Ontario to Lake America today with an executive order.
As you know, Canada's been ripping us off for a long time on trade, very sadly. Even the military, we defend Canada for nothing. We don't get anything. They don't pay us to defend Canada, but we defend Canada. And they understand that. As an example, we bought icebreakers. They'd like to use them. We have 11 brand new icebreakers coming in. They'd like to use the icebreakers. They don't pay for anything. And they want to be treated like a state, but they're not a state. But they want to be treated like they're a state. And so we just can't do that anymore. We lose, on average, over the last 15 years, $60 billion a year carrying Canada. So we just can't do it anymore. It has to come to a stop.
Well, that's part of why he says he renamed it. Frank Miele is back with us this afternoon. He is a columnist for Real Clear Politics. I could almost fast forward, Frank, to the last part of your latest column where you say Republicans have an election to win in November. Trump presumably wants a Republican to succeed him in 28. Unnecessary insults, exaggerations, and provocations make both tasks harder. I don't believe you were specifically talking about renaming Lake Ontario, but there have been a series of things that have happened, and I've kind of rolled my eyes on this stuff today. I mean, I get a kick out of the fact that it triggers the left, but I also think we have more important things to be dealing with executive orders or anything else in the Oval Office.
Yeah, well, it is almost every day, and I'm with you on rolling my eyes. Lake Ontario is, it's Lake Ontario. Everybody knows it's Lake Ontario. Canada, despite what he's saying, is our closest ally and best friend. I mean, I live, 70 miles from Canada and here in Montana, and we really like having good relations. We like Canadians to come here and shop. We like to go there and enjoy ourselves. So, Mr. Trump, please.
I don't get it, Frank. Now, look, I want the audience to have perspective. You've been someone, we've known each other for a while. You've talked a lot about different issues, but you've been a big, staunch supporter of President Trump on many, many issues, right? And I know that I think you're calling balls and strikes, which is what I try to do. It's frustrating because there are opportunities. There's good things happening. The stock market is rocking right now, and he wants to do Lake Ontario to Lake America. and keep saying that we're demolishing Iran. So I don't know where this is taking us, and I think we're kind of off kilter.
I know. And, the reason it's going to cost him support is because it looks like he's not really in touch with reality. I mean, they're little jokes, sure, but, when the one I led with in my column was that the families being worried about sailors aboard the USS Abraham Lincoln after they'd been out at sea for 9 months. And the president was like, no, 9 months isn't long enough, not nearly long enough. We need those guys to, suck it up. And, we're big supporters of our military, aren't we? And all he had to do was say, I agree, it's tough, but we've got an important mission to do over there. And I've asked them to do it, and they've sucked it up, and they're doing it for me, and it's for our country. And, he could say very similar things and win friends. And instead, he says things to annoy people. And, I compared him to Cruella de Vil. Well, I'm sure she thinks that everybody wants to wear a coat made of, dog hide. And she thinks it's a wonderful thing. And Trump thinks having gold everywhere in his office is a wonderful thing. I don't think he's ever heard of the word ostentatious or showy or gauche. He simply has, he's got blind spots, the size of Ontario itself. And this is what's really concerning me, because I don't think he right now cares about winning anymore. In my column, when I wrote it, I said, I think he wants to win. I think he wants Republicans to control the Congress, but I'm starting to think maybe he doesn't even care, because it's going too far.
I hope it's not the case. I mean, he's going down to campaign for Ken Paxton, and I guess that's an indication. Look, if you look at the polling in that, I think the polling's been way off in some of these races, certainly in Wisconsin and in Minnesota. And I'm not one to try to, cave into these illusions like with Beto O'Rourke that a Democrat is going to win a big red state like Texas. But Ken Paxton has a lot of baggage, right? And that's a problem for a lot of Texas voters. So I don't think that Ken Paxton's going to lose that race, but I think even the people who watch these races as close as they do have put it into a lean R, not a likely R, right, Frank?
Yeah, I wish I was as optimistic as you, because it's not just Texas. We already had Georgia turn blue. What's going on there? That should be a stronghold for Republicans. It isn't. Iowa is now in play, and apparently very, very likely to turn over. And Ken Paxton is not a great candidate, but I support him totally because I know he'll vote the right way. And I'm sure, the president's going to make that case, but I bet he'll also, while he's there, say something embarrassing to Ken Paxton. And, he has an ability to take his strength. When he wants to help you, he can help you, but his mouth doesn't. And I almost called my column, please, Mr. President, shut up. I labeled it just silence is sometimes golden, to be a little kinder, but I'm really getting frustrated.
I know you are. I can see it in your columns, and I have been too. And, I don't know who's, if Susie Wiles has lost her touch with the president. She seemingly maybe was someone who was keeping him on track with some of this stuff, but it's it's becoming, as we get closer to November, I think more problematic. I don't know. I guess it would be fascinating to watch this president operate with a Senate that is controlled by the Democrats and a House that's controlled by the Democrats. I don't know if anything would get done, but he's got to start caring about this because the future of the damn country is involved. It's not like we're dealing with normal Democrats either. We're dealing with dangerous Democrats like El Sayed. I mean, to have even one member of the United States Senate with his philosophy and beliefs, that's not just like that's like having 40 or 50 members in the House because there's so much power that's wielded in the Senate.
Absolutely. And it legitimizes those, crazy ideas. And it says, well, that's a normal senator, so we can start looking at that as an actual thing we want to do in our
and that's
country.
frightening. That is frightening. Frank Miele, thanks for coming on. I always appreciate it. Hang in there. We'll see if the president takes our advice, right? See you, Frank. Take care.
On the Illinois side, westbound 5570 is slowing at 111. That's road work. Same thing, eastbound 64 lined up 157 through 159. Now, on the Missouri side, we're fine on the Poplar Street Bridge. All of the bridges are fine. Eastbound 70 is slow, headed into downtown. Westbound 6440 is slow, approaching Kings Highway out through McCausland. And 170 is backed up from Olive through 64. There's even some volume eastbound 64, east of Lindbergh, through Big Bend. Now, southbound 270, still some volume headed down toward Doherty Ferry and south of 44. But out west, 70 isn't bad. Little slow past 141 and at the 64 split. 64, moderate volume Boone's Crossing and around Lake St. Louis Boulevard. I'm Sue Thomas with traffic. 97.1 FM Talk, St. Louis Conservative.
Well, a week ago, we were getting ready to wrap up the first day of the BMW Championship with 50 of the top golfers on the planet. Now we have 30 at the Tour Championship, and we're going to get an update from Atlanta. Well, Dan is here, Dan Reardon, but an update from Eastlake Golf Club in Atlanta, the leaderboard coming up next, plus audio cut of the day. Well, I want you to get a free estimate on a Generac home standby generator from Generator Supercenter. I think I mentioned it a couple of times this week. I know that name. It's a big brand name, Generac, and I knew it very, very early from like 30 years ago because I worked in Milwaukee, and they're located in Waukesha, Wisconsin. So I remember talking about Generac generators and Generac, the company, a long time ago. They're in a situation now where they can really help you out. We've had power blips. We've had ice storms in St. Louis. We've got, obviously, tornadoes and thunderstorms that take wires down. You got to give yourself peace of mind. And you can do it right now with a free estimate from Generator Supercenter. They have low monthly payments available and financing, so you should look into that. If you don't think you can afford it, you can, and they can prove it to you when you make a call and get an estimate. These are great quality generators. They're not portable. They're going to kick in right away via propane and natural gas when your power goes out. So if you're someone who has had this happen, especially if you're out of town, your food spoils, you don't want that to happen again. Give yourself the peace of mind. At the least, call for a free estimate. And again, they have financing and low monthly payments. 499-2020, Generator Supercenter of St. Louis.com. All right, we have a Reardon Roundtable tomorrow. I've already heard via Twitter from the mayor of Eureka, not happy that we're saying we're not going to call the new place not Six Flags. I think Sean was joking. He was basically saying, no matter what you call it, come down and have fun because people are doing that at Six Flags. So we'll have him on the panel tomorrow. Jeff Rainford will be here as well. Coming off our outstanding event here in St. Louis at Belle Reve Country Club, the Tour Championship is underway with 29 players, Dan Reardon. J.J. Spawn had an injury. He had to pull out, didn't he?
Yeah. He didn't say anything. I was literally down there on Sunday after his round, so that came up during the week. But, I don't think I've ever seen what we saw today at the Tour Championship. 29 players in the field. Every player shot even par or better. Nobody shot over par for the day.
That's crazy.
I don't remember seeing that. And they're led by Minwoo Lee, who had 8 birdies, no bogeys, a 62. And then Victor Hovland, who had the tournament best round last week at the BMW, shot 600 today, 64. He shot 63 last week at Belle Reve. So a very good leaderboard, and like I said, great scoring, just amazingly good scoring.
I would say so. I'm just looking at the board right now. I mean, everybody, I don't know if you can put anyone really out of contention right now. Now, Rory's not starting out super hot. He is sitting at 200, but then on the other hand, Scotty Scheffler is off to a great start. He's -5. A couple of guys that did not do very well in St. Louis, like Ryan Gerard and Bhatia, are doing pretty well in the first day. But again, first day is one thing. You gotta ride this golf course out for the rest of the weekend. With scores not over par, does that concern you that this is too easy of a golf course for a Tour Championship?
One day doesn't tell us what the whole story will be. Is it too easy? Yeah, when everybody shoots par or better, the setup of the course has been extremely friendly. By the way, going back to BMW, I'm going to recommend to you and all your listeners, they were on site, and this is the second time they've ever done this program, Chasing Sunday on YouTube.
A
1-hour program capturing the 4 players mic'd up for the entire week at the BMW Championship. I saw it yesterday. It's really worth the while, and anybody who's been there will enjoy it in particular.
So that's only I did see this, Dan. Tell me, it's only on YouTube. Is that where you can find it?
It's NFL Films is the producing crew. I think if you go to PGA Tour Studios, they can direct you. But they debuted at the Players Championship as a trial run. But this is something that's going to become a regular feature. I don't think it's going to be a weekly feature. But for anybody that was at the BMW Championship, it would be a great time to go through this. One other non-BMW or FedEx playoff note is the LIV announced that everybody that works for LIV will be out of job.
Good riddance.
Starting the first week in September. They'll be furloughed until they can figure out what to do.
Good riddance to LIV. By the way, on the NFL Films point, that makes sense because I saw the crews from NFL Films, and they're some of the best, so it makes sense that they were participating in doing this. And who all was mic'd up? Wyndham was mic'd up. Who else, Dan?
I think Chris Gotterup was mic'd up. I'd have to go back through that.
I got to watch that, though. I'm going to watch it for sure.
Fox. Yeah, if anybody likes the Full Swing series or anybody likes, it's really based on the Hard Knocks in the NFL.
Yes.
It's extremely well done, and they got a winner because they decided who they were going to mic up before the week started, and there were 50 players in the field, and they get the winner in that process. That was a special kind of thing for them.
Well, I'm a huge fan of Hard Knocks. I watched episode 4 this week on HBO, and the NFL Films, they do such a great job, so that sounds very compelling. Dan, we'll get another leaderboard update in 24 hours. You have a great night.
Enjoyed it, Mark.
All right, take care. That's Dan Reardon, no relation.
Stand by. Playback ready.
Now, the audio cut of the day.
Well, we're going to do a couple things here. This case with Lindsay Clancy has gone to the jury. There were closing arguments today by both the defense and the prosecution. It's such an emotional case, and once again, I'm going to name these children because they're the ones that should be remembered. Cora was just 5 years old. Dawson, just 3 years old. Callan, 8 months old, when there's no dispute over what happened. Lindsay Clancy, their mother, took their lives. Now, the question that the jury has to decide right now is, was she temporarily insane because of the psychosis that was induced by the medicines? It's a big, big case. Here is some of the closing arguments from earlier today.
This stuff up in between taking care of the family, in between all of the stuff that was going on with visiting doctors, seeing doctors, going to Rhode Island, being told, no, we can't help you, calling a suicide hotline, we can't help you, calling another suicide hotline, we can't help you. My God, what does she have to do? She was reaching out for help, and she was not getting it. She turns herself in to McLean Hospital.
This case is not about our mental health system or how it treats women or what's in the DSM-5 and what's not. That's a distraction to get you angry and passionate about an important issue, but an issue that's not on trial here. This wasn't a woman suffering from a lack of care, a lack of resources. She had an abundance of help. An abundance of care.
So they wrapped those arguments. The judge gave instructions to the jury.
It is the Commonwealth's burden to prove at least one of the following beyond reasonable doubt. One, that at the time of the alleged crime, the defendant did not suffer from a mental disease or defect. Or two, that if the defendant did suffer from a mental disease or defect, she nonetheless retained the substantial capacity to appreciate the wrongfulness or criminality of her conduct and to conform her conduct to the requirements of the law.
The jurors spent 3 hours deliberating, then they were sent home. They're not sequestered. They'll be back at it tomorrow, and we'll see where this case is going to take us. Today was Carolyn Levitt's last day at the White House, giving her last press briefing.
I will give my advice to whomever assumes the job. I think it's most important in this job to understand that President Trump is his own best spokesperson, and we joke, Stephen Chung and me, that he is the true communications director and press secretary here at the White House.
She says she'll miss the White House press corps.
Yeah. I'll miss you guys. I know that's probably not something anyone would expect me to say, but obviously it's been great working with all of you.
I think that Caroline is leaving with a tremendous amount of respect. I mean,
Yeah.
I'd say, I would hope that some people on the other side could look at it this way. I thought KJP was just awful, and you could tell that she was lying all the time.
Yes.
And she was way in over her skis, and we know why she got her job. Jen Psaki did her job. I mean, I didn't agree with her politics, but she did a competent job at that briefing, podium, the room or whatever. Carolyn was outstanding, and I think even more outstanding because
for age.
She's only 28 years old.
Amazing.
Right? Unreal. But she's a mom. She's going to be a mom. Something tells me we'll see her back in the political future sometime to come. Sue, have a great night. We're
You
back
too.
tomorrow. We got a Reardon Roundtable at 3.
Still some volume westbound 6440 Kings Highway out past McCausland. Eastbound, just a little bit slow at 170, and that's backing up southbound 170. And westbound 40 slowing again as you approach Prospect out through the 70 split. 70 looks fine out of downtown. Westbound, though, is slow from Forestdale to a point just before Wright City. On the Illinois side, 5570 slowing in both directions at 111. And 64 still slow in the construction zone, headed for 159. I'm Sue Thomas, and that's Traffic 97.1 FM Talk, St. Louis Conservative.
One thing that we know that has been happening in the economy is the stock market has kind of been rocking and rolling. That's a good thing, but will it last? Now, I want you to think about this when we talk about the Retirement Advisory Group, because Bob Kershaw, Tammy Kershaw, we did a great seminar with them just a couple of weeks ago. We're not going to have another one probably until early October. It doesn't matter. You can go one-on-one into the office, and it's a great time to do that because if you're worried about your financial future, if you're 59 and a half or older in particular, you can do some things with the 401k, rolling them over to save you in taxes. How will you survive for the future? We've got stories, and this is kind of frightening, people that thought they had enough money to retire and they had to go back in the workforce. You don't want that to happen. That's why Bob and Tammy will guide you through the process. They'll make sure that they give you a specific plan. You go one-on-one to the office, and there's no obligation whatsoever. They're going to give you a free copy of their latest edition book, Your Key to a Worry-Free Retirement. Their philosophy is safely linking to the market. That's how their clients have not lost a penny of their principal, and they can show you how that's happened. Make an appointment. You can wait for another seminar, but you shouldn't do that. Make an appointment today, 314-993-9494. The website, retirementkey.com. They're the official financial planners of my show, the Retirement Advisory Group.